Shouldn't be said, it is not right. A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say. If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour. Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, well, say now, well, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
Across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and happy Sunday to you wherever you are on Scorchio, United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Looking out the window, it's still quite overcast today. There's a sort of thick layer of London fog hanging over the horizon there. But I have a feeling, I checked the weather forecast this morning, and it's going to be toasty. So do make sure you slap on your Factor 25 and stay hydrated and leave the rest down to me because I'm going to be with you until 10 o'clock this morning, bringing you all of the Sunday paper headlines, some news, some views, and hopefully be speaking to some of yous as well, for want of better grammar. And if you'd like to partake in our communal catharsis, you know the number to dial by now, and if you don't, well, let me remind you, it's 03444991000 and it's charged at your normal network rate, and you know what that means. That means your therapy here is for free and there's not even a waiting list before you speak to a specialist like me, your very own current affairs agony aunt. You can also use that number to send me a WhatsApp 03444991000 or leave me a voice note on WhatsApp. If you don't want the full 1 minute long, 2 minute long on-air session, that's right, you can save yourself a minute 30 and just chuck 30 seconds of thoughts down into an audio file and ping it across and we'll play it out to the nation. 87222 is the number if you'd like to send me a text message. If you're a little bit old school, if you want to do that, you've got to write the word talk before your message. That way, it manages to avoid all of those old television satellites. It manages to avoid all of the spyware, the space links, the Soviet rubbish still in there from 1978 and the odd astronaut who didn't make it, and gets all the way down to the masts on top of Talk Towers and through some magical chutes into this studio where I can then read it from my screen. We're on X at talkTV. Right, OK, shall we kick off? Because I am joined today by Claire Muldoon. Broadcaster is your sort of
umbrella term.
Your umbrella term, broadcaster.
I quite like agony aunt as well, actually.
Oh, should we be agony aunts together?
Yeah, that'd be really, really harsh, though. That's the problem.
Oh, we're sort of like mean mummy.
Oh, my goodness me.
Right.
I think if you've got a problem, we'll sort it.
Yeah. And do you know what? I do have a problem. I have a big problem.
Tell me your problem.
Well, I have a big problem with that stupid jamboree of left-wing lunatics who cultishly stand there chanting death, 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 thinking they're on the right side of history. That's what I got a problem with. Blaming Glastonbury.
You mean the least diverse population of people who actually got the 400 quid ticket to go and spend 5 days in literal
a quagmire of misery, misanthropy, extreme leftism and feces is probably what you're looking for.
Yeah. But, you know, the far right got such a bad name, and yet I think this is an absolute spectacle of the far left.
Yeah.
And I kept saying, you cannot keep calling people as a pejorative term, oh, they're far right, they're far right. I mean, without a far right, with a far right, you must have a far left. And I always thought, oh, it can't be. Well, shiver me timbers.
Do you know what I've never really understood?
What?
I don't actually believe in the term far right at all.
Well, I agree with you. But you've just used the term far left, so I thought we'd just better put it in there for a bit of balance.
See, just, you know, as it's a Sunday and we like to chew over topics in a nice leisurely
I'd rather be
manner.
here in an air-conditioned studio than in Glastonbury right now, actually.
Oh,
it must
absolutely.
be awful.
Oh, gosh.
Is
well,
Rod Stewart headlining today?
Yeah, do you think he's going to get booed on stage?
Because
he's
of his
come out
support
and,
of Nigel
I know.
Farage.
I can't wait to see what happens. I mean, sorry, Rod, if you get booed, but I will. I don't know why I'll enjoy it, because I like Rod Stewart and I like Nigel Farage. So why?
Yeah.
I think I'll just like it because I like seeing leftists irritated. But the thing is, this whole concept of far right, in my mind, on the political spectrum, left wing is big state, right wing is small state. So far right to me is actually just libertarian people who don't want the state doing anything, not rounding people up and trying to murder them. That to me is always far left. Every time the state gets too muscular and starts doing crazy things like putting people in prison for tweets, that's far left. Far right is actually kind of the opposite of that. It's sort of like live and let live.
It really is. And survival of the fittest, therefore.
Yeah. So therefore, I am extremely far right. I appreciate.
So what's your other problem then? Come on, lay them out on the table. Let's get them sorted.
Basically, I mean, let's get our teeth into this Glastonbury thing. And if you weren't privy to the story of yesterday, there's some group that I've never heard of. I doubt anyone else has ever really heard of them. They've only heard of themselves. Bob Villain.
Yeah, well, they're quite villainous, actually.
Oh, is that based on Bob Dylan with a V?
Yeah.
Me.
I'd never heard of them.
No, no one has. But they're apparently a rap duo.
Punk rap duo.
A punk rap duo, which means basically they're just unnecessarily offensive and without much talent.
And shout.
Yes, exactly. And seem not to know where the wardrobe was, but backstage, because they were sort of... they could have done with a few more items of clothing. Yes, I know it was hot and they had to leap around like animals in a zoo, but, you know, they could have... Just not very much decorum, having all your sort of big, ugly tattoos on display.
I've watched Glastonbury, and I think everyone remembers watching Adele headline it a few years ago. And she was magnificent, she really was, and I'm not a massive Adele fan. But I just don't think the crowds are kind of the same this year. There's an altered state there, notwithstanding the celebs that fly in. And it's, I mean, that's the other thing that jars for me. They're supposed to be so, the climate, everything's changing, poor us, poor the world, save the world. And yet they're flying in and out from the helipads. It's just what planet?
It used to be a music festival. It used to be a music festival, and like all things that start down the trajectory of sort of woke leftism, it keeps going until reality is a dot on the horizon behind it. And this is what's happened to Glastonbury. The more expensive the tickets got, the harder it is to buy the tickets, the more exclusive the crowd who go there, which means the more arbitrarily radical they are, because they bang on about stuff they don't know just because it's trendy, all with their kafir. I saw a picture in a newspaper, and this to me really summed up the whole sort of rubbish of Glastonbury and the crowds who go along with the mad stuff that they say on stage there. There was some guy in designer sunglasses, all looking like all his lanyards, his VIP, all his bracelets, look at the festivals I've been to, with these designer sunglasses with the Palestinian flag. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. You get your designer wraparounds on with that pro-Pali flag. That's how you do virtue, you absolute bozo.
Well, there's a lot of virtue signalling going on, and two things on that. There is more security around Worthy Farm than there is RAF Bryce Norton.
I know.
And
the Channel, for that matter.
Jeremy Corbyn, whom I do respect, and I do think he has said quite a lot of fruitful things in terms of how to deal with poverty, etc., right? And he was talking about, to America, to Trump, we don't build... We don't build walls, we build bridges, and yet the whole sign was round the wall of the security of
right, exactly,
of
one of the most heavily guarded, exclusive, difficult to access,
more
events.
Difficult to get into.
Right, absolutely mad. But what do you make of the fact that Kneecap played, who we've all suddenly learnt who these characters are.
That's absolutely fine, right? I don't think you can. I've always said this. I'm not a fan of cancel culture, Alex.
No.
Because all that does is drive it underground.
Oh.
I would far rather see and hear, if I choose to.
In all its ugliness.
Absolutely.
I'm with you on that. But
how on earth can the kids or younger people form any form of critical thinking if they're not made aware of it?
The problem I've got is the two-tierism. The dichotomy between, there's the BBC whacking up offence warnings on carry-on films, you know, on Little Britain. Well, we better take that down off the iPlayer. Some people might be a bit sensitive. Like all of that stuff. It's like, oh my gosh, all this old-school British comedy, you can't have it there because someone might just see something politically incorrect, and Lord knows we don't have enough safe spaces built in this country. And then this Bob Villain lot and Kneecap, who they knew, they could have anticipated. They did leave a delay time on the Kneecap performance. They could dump bits. But all this stuff, I mean, even when Bob Villain started shouting, death to the IDF, they just played it. They just happily played it. And if it was anything else, if it was imagine at some reform rally if they started sort of going, death to Hamas. Like, it would be like outrage, the feed would have been shut down. And the problem is, when things have sort of played out like that, at one of the world's biggest music festivals, which is then being broadcast by our state broadcaster, and not just the people on stage, but all the crowds are joining together, chanting death chants. And that just goes on without a blink of an eye. It normalises it. That's the problem I've got, because they would dump that footage straight away if it was anything remotely... even if it was just like, we love Brexit or something like that, they'd be like, boom, press the big red button, send it down the U-bend of on-air time. But something like this, it's normalised because no one says or does anything, because there's this sort of... How did we get to it?
It's a fear, actually. They seem to be self-policing, and this is the issue with policing oneself. And that's the problem I think the BBC has had for many, many years. There's no real accountability because you have to pay the licence fee. You have to do this, you have to do that. And there's no checks and balances, really.
Yeah. I still cannot for the life of me understand, given these people are paying 400 quid a ticket, one assumes they've come for money or have made money, and usually in the world of when you've got lots of zeros in your bank account, you've probably got some brain cells to go with it. Not always. Some people are just, born ultra privileged. Now I sound like the leftists. But, what I don't understand is how people can go to a music festival, be openly supporting a terrorist organisation
who see it as a terrorist organisation
by massacring people at a music festival.
Yes,
how do they not see it as a terrorist organisation?
Muchly irony, because they still buy into the narrative, right, that there's a genocide that's been happening. Now, I am no fan of what Israel is doing at the moment in Gaza at all. At all. I think it is bordering on scandal, actually, that no one's saying, look, just stop, you've done enough now, just stop. I know the hostages still have to be released. I know that Hamas are a terrorist organisation, and I know that's why news outlets cannot call what's happening genocide, because they will not see it as a purge of a religious or a native culture. They are seeing it as their right, Israel's right to defend themselves after what happened on October the 7th, 2023. That's out of the way now. That's the position. But there is a long-standing narrative here and a long-standing discourse of people who do think Israel have been the main protagonists and instigator of a lot of issues in Palestine. They won't even believe that Palestine is a state.
Yeah. No, I mean, I just don't understand how Islamism, which is one of the most barbaric, monstrous, backwards, medieval, brutal, misogynistic, so out of step with the so-called progressive values of all of those short, fringe, blue-haired weirdos in that field.
It used to be a wonderful, wonderful country.
But, I mean, the leftists once upon a time would be out there going, protect the... Well, the leftists would have let us protect the Jews, let's be realistic. But, you would think that they would look at all these women being forced to wear the hijab. They'd look at the amount of people in Gaza that Hamas themselves kill.
Yes.
because they're traitors. The fact that they're burying missiles and rockets underneath schools and in playgrounds and hospitals and using women and children as human shields and creating all this propaganda and sponsoring terrorism around the world. And you'd think that anybody with even just a small iota of normal morality or Western values would go, whoa, that be evil right there.
Yes.
And instead they're like, yeah, come on, the evil.
But they don't, because a lot of these people a lot of the young people at Glastonbury anyway, are at universities that are very, very, very left-wing. And you don't get to discuss everything, because we covered this 2 weeks ago, you and I. A lot of universities now are frightened to do some courses, or to teach some courses, for fear of being cancelled, for fear of saying the wrong thing. Now, where on earth is the free speech in that?
Yeah.
Surely.
Where did this stuff come from, Claire? Like, because when I was at university, people were still normal. We got absolutely, trolleyed in the students' union
on a Wednesday afternoon, because everyone was off.
Only about 6 lectures a week anyway, because I did literature and philosophy, which basically was a green card to getting off your face and pretending to write essays.
That was in the days when we did write essays, actually.
I mean, my
we
university, we did write them, yeah.
And we had no chat GPT.
No. I mean, basically, I still didn't really have much internet. You had to go to the library and get actual books. Ooh. That teaches you a thing or two when you actually have to do a bit of work from time to time.
And then when you leave it too late and the book's not there. Oh.
But when I was at university, I used to moan all the time by how Tory it was up at Durham, because everybody was some sort of rah, where did that term go? Do you know the term rah? Yeah, everyone was some sort of rah who'd gone on their gap year, and they'd have like game parties, and where are you going this summer? Are you going shooting? Are you going to take your boat down to St Mawes? I'm like, no, I'm going to be working in a nightclub by night time and inputting data into a spreadsheet for the NHS during the day. Woohoo! But now, like, from what I understand, Durham's become one of these sort of mad leftist universities as well. Durham, for crying out loud! Couldn't get more silver spoons than Durham. Sort of more landed gentry, more old school Tory than Durham. And even they've gone to the dark side, apparently.
Well, let's hope they'll swing back. Let's hope, because I think the left-leaning academics are so closed. They just don't want to have any discussion.
Where did they come from, though? So I'm saying 20 years ago when I was at university, normal place.
Nigel. Where did they come from? Where did they go? Where did they come from? God, Nigel.
Where did they come from? Now, Richie has sent comments saying, Alex, in the late 70s, early 80s, Glastonbury was a good festival. But since the 90s, it's slowly changed. It's now just full of lefty morons. They don't even have any bands worth paying to go and see. People like Kneecap, a totally talentless crap band. Well, I think they do. Yeah, but isn't all music totally talentless and crap these days? I don't know. I haven't really listened to it. I sort of stopped in the 90s. I realised it was peak civilization.
Sam Fender, Olivia Dean.
Who?
Oh, stop it.
No, who's that?
Oh, Alex. Sam Fender.
Dean, Tech Up. Do you know who Sam Fender is? So Dean knows who he is, and Tech Up nodded.
Dave.
But Dean doesn't know any songs. Who's the other one?
Olivia Dean.
Do anyone know who that is? No.
Oh my goodness me.
Yeah, just someone who's about 2 years old just put up her hand. That's it. But yeah, see, you're just cool, Claire.
Too cool for school. Too cool for Glastonbury.
Okay.
I just would not go. It's not my thing.
No, I wouldn't go. And this is a very important point from Dave. What's the difference between what Kneecap were calling for at Glastonbury and what Olivia Connolly, look what you've done now, Lucy Connolly put out on social media? I mean, yeah, quite. I mean, there is a difference with shouting, in terms of the targets. One's saying death to soldiers and the other is saying...
Kneecap was the best. Oh, yeah, the only good Tory is a dead Tory.
Oh, that's dark.
That's what they said.
That's dark.
Oh, hugely dark. I mean, two names, Sir David Amos and Joe Cox.
Yeah.
Well, Joe Cox wasn't Conservative, but the point remains.
Well, I even think of Mike Freer, whose constituency office was burnt down in arson attacks by Islamists and had to quit because of death threats and stuff like that. It's just mad, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Oh, the world is going mad, so why don't you join us in trying to find some peace and harmony and common sense
serenity.
Serenity. So Sunday serenity amidst
that's what
the
we're
dystopia.
Going for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Join us in the church pews of common sense. Be part of the congregation. 03444991000
I like it.
is the number if you would like to get in touch with my blessings. You can also leave me a WhatsApp on that number, or leave me a voice note on the WhatsApp on that number. 8722 is the number if you'd rather send me a cheeky little text. You have to write the word talk before you do your message. We're on X at talkTV, and we're back to ease you gently into a weekend of hopefulness, optimism and patriotism right after this. They promised stability.
They said the grown-ups are back in charge.
I was so happy you just couldn't believe.
Our work is urgent, and we begin it today.
I mean, you couldn't really scrape together a worse gang of misfits to run a dog kennel.
Broken promises,
Billions blown,
botched U-turns.
and Britain is burning.
One of the most immeasurably eventful.
1 year in power,
And Britain in freefall. It's just been a disaster.
1 year of chaos.
Friday, 4th of July.
9 p.m.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, hello, welcome back to the good ship Sensible, HMS Pragmatism and Patriotism. I quite like HMS Pragmatic. I think that's a good name, isn't it?
I thought the Congregation of Common Sense was great.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, we'll have
I really
that
like
then.
that for Sunday.
Sunday Fun Day.
Yeah.
Now, we're talking, of course, weren't we, before the break about crazy leftists at music festivals, which puts me in mind of a crazy leftist who's often seen at the DJ booth in Beefer with a bottle of WKD Blue, like, all right, yeah, down with the Tory scum. Woo.
Who's that?
Angela Rayner.
My goodness me, do you remember that?
I do remember that. I've got many memories of Angela Rayner burned into my frontal cortex.
She can have a holiday, but everyone deserves a holiday, for heaven's sake. And if that's her jip, then that's her jip.
Well, no, fair. I agree with that. But apparently, you know, there are people who are allies of Big Ange saying that Starmer's going to be gone within a year. The first 12 months have been a shambles, and she will become Prime Minister. I'm like, oh my God.
Well, 100 days in, I termed their government as an omnishambles, and I said, look, I'd rather Starmer left and let Angela Rayner take over, because at least then you will get a Labour Party, a Socialist Party, and you can just let them sit back and watch everything fall apart. She's supposed to have been starting to build homes. She's not. I mean, I do quite like Angela Rayner. I really do.
I'd go down for, you know, a bottle of
she is the
Whispering Angel, or whatever it's called.
She's the archetypal social mobility, good, you know, girl done good, right? She's dragged herself up. She really has, and she is now the deputy of the country.
Yeah.
I mean, she's done well.
Look, I agree on one thing. which is I think she would be so cataclysmically terrible.
Yeah.
Because, and I don't want to sound like a snob here, because I'm not a snob, I'm a lorry driver's daughter, but the woman's stupid, right? The woman doesn't seem particularly, you know...
But she's managed to get where she is.
Well, she has managed to get where she is, no one's denying that. But there's a big difference between her getting to where she is, which is sort of, I think, almost a tokenistic gesture of, here's our working class, Big Ange as Deputy Prime Minister. It's a job title without much of a job.
But Alex, I think we need to take them at their name, at their game, and we need to say, you know...
This is what I think, this is what I do agree with you on, which is the problem we've got in Starmer, is ever since Lord Ali gave him his glow-up and gave him some bins so his eyes didn't look like proverbial pea holes in the sand, and, you know, and his hair didn't look as Lego-like, and his clothes were a little less austere. He looked a little less like someone who would sort of be on the wrong side of history and Schindler's List, and more like, you know, cute, cuddly,
you've given this too much
Taylor
thought,
Swift
Alex.
concerts.
You've given this too much
thought.
thought.
Well, no, I haven't, because the thing is about Starmer, he's actually quite a dark character.
Oh, he's hugely dark.
I mean, this is the man. I say all the time on
I
this
don't
show,
think he's got a soul.
I don't think he's got a soul. Exactly. And this is the man who went to voluntarily work in a socialist workers' camp in the USSR as part of his gap year.
Do you know something? Did you know he was the son of a toolmaker?
Oh, what? I'd never heard that.
Gosh, yeah.
What, the hammer and sickle?
Yeah.
But the thing is about Starmer, when you look at his, Peter Hitchens is brilliant on this, you look at his leftist credentials, all the organisations he's in, especially as a young barrister. Now, there were two sort of leftist legal entities. One was sort of...
defend led by donkeys as well in court.
Oh, he's defended all sorts, but not as much as his buddy... Lord Herman. This is why I'm going to come on to this.
Okay.
Because the thing is, Starmer, people go, well, you know, there's Blairism, which is like Starmerism, and then there's Corbynism. I'm like, Starmerism is not Blairism as such. Starmerism, actually, when you look at his credentials, that man is so ideologically left-wing. Whatever this legal society he was in, there was a sort of less radical Lawyer Society, then there's the one who literally want, you know, busts of Lenin in courthouses. And he was in the sort of more radical wing. And he's become Prime Minister. And the things he's said and done in the past, his worldview is so wildly different for this sort of faux centrism that's being sort of labelled as
Tony Blair.
which is Blairism. The Starmer's actually so much more radical than that. And what Starmer seems to have done is he's been the voice of sort of, or the face of centrism, or at least pretending to be. But he's brought in his buddy, hasn't he, from his chambers, that mad Lord Hermer, whose views are sort of like critical race theory on steroids. He's massively culturally Marxist, massively anti-England, massively anti-nation state, hyper-global socialist. And I think what Starmer does, he's brought in his mate with no political experience. There you go. Have the biggest legal job in the land. But it's not just that. Normally, the Attorney General answers to the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister says, right, we're going to have to do X, Y, and Z. This is my political motivation. We want to change this legislation, make that all make sense. No, instead, what Starmer does is says to Lord Hermer, should I do this? And Lord Hermer goes, you must sell the Chagos Islands because it's, you know, post-colonial to do so.
And lease them back.
National law. He was the one who said to Starmer, right, you cannot back a because that would be illegal by international law. This Hermer, as far as I can tell, is sitting there pulling the puppet strings.
But
and he's a radical.
What was the issue a few weeks back, and he was asked to apologise? What was it he did? He said something. I can't remember what it was.
We seem to have learned, haven't we, that he was the one who I think gave the instruction. I could be wrong on this, so I'll say allegedly, because I can't remember where I read it. But I believe him to be the person who gave the instructions to make all of these sort of rioters and people like Lucy Conley, the social media posters, plead guilty. I think he was behind the televised trials of all of it. You know, he basically, all those decisions which sent a chill down my spine thinking this is leftism to a dangerous level now. We've got to the stage where we have completely forgotten who our allies are internationally.
Well, I don't think we've forgotten them. I just don't think Labour have any.
Well, no.
And I think that was blatantly obvious, that the fact that the Business Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, couldn't answer the question.
Top lawyer Jonathan Reynolds.
When did you hear, when did America notify the government that...
Right.
Yeah, they have notified...
No, they did.
Well, no, they had to. They had to, but I would say maybe an hour before it was due to happen.
Yeah, I mean, Europe wasn't brought to the table at all on any of this stuff.
But why would it be? Trump, they're not paying up the dues for NATO.
Nope.
Trump's carrying the can. You know, Trump is high risk, high reward, high return. What do they expect?
Exactly.
What do they expect?
I mean, Europe just can't be trusted on anything when it comes to defending Western values.
They really can't.
But, yeah, I mean, there you go. At least if we had Angela Rayner, and this is circling back to that, at least she looks like a socialist, speaks like a socialist, doesn't sort of pretend to not be.
Don't use that pejoratively, though, because I think this is a really serious matter, because I think I do think she should be PM for all of those reasons.
At least, at least it looks like what it actually is.
Yeah, people voted for a Labour government. They don't have a Labour government.
They didn't really have anything.
Give them a Labour government. We've got nothing.
Yeah.
We've got nothing.
I mean, now you've got the Tories going, if Angela Rayner's workers' rights bill passes, which I understand is now going to be delayed till September,
£1 billion.
50,000 jobs.
Yeah.
You know, this whole idea of, 0 hours contracts, bad.
Well,
I mean,
they
loads
are.
of people, they kind of are, but loads of people, and they start out of their career, end up doing stuff like that to get shifts to fill, to get experience. It's sort of used, and it helps both individuals who want to have that sort of a contract and the companies who wish to use it.
Companies have been using them too much.
Sick leave from day one, when you've got the level of worklessness that we've got now, especially 18 to 25-year-olds who go, oh, I've got anxiety, I can't come into work. If you give sick leave from day one, you're just going to have people. I hear this all the time from employers who say that there's this weird thing going on where people send in their CVs, they get invited to the job interview, and they don't want to go to the interview because they're too afraid of seeing anybody in person. Then someone gets offered a job and then they don't actually turn up for it. Or there was someone I was speaking to the other day who's looking for a receptionist, did all these interviews, got someone, and then when she came there, she said, oh, I've got to go home, I've got anxiety. Why? I don't like talking on the phone.
Well, that's
You're
your job.
a receptionist.
That's your job.
So you can't start giving sick leave and all these, work entitlements from day one, because guess what? We've got a feckless, lazy underbelly of a younger generation. Not all of them. There are some brilliant, hard-working, bright kids out there. But there's a cohort of them who do this, what do they call it, like goblin mode, and how to... there's a phrase they use and brag about on social media where they're sort of at work but not actually doing the bare minimum. Basically.
Right. Sort of an acronym for
it. Yeah, there's some sort of hashtag.
Well, I'll tell you this, it wouldn't happen in my house. They would not be allowed. My youngest is 21, my eldest is 27, and they are all highly disciplined, hard-working kids.
But the problem is, of course, is those highly disciplined, hard-working kids are going to go on to be the taxpayers. We're propping up these lazy...
It really has gone beyond a joke for employers because it's really tough. The hike in the Class 2 national insurance for them is costing, I know one SME, it's costing them at least 10 grand a month. That's 120k a year. That could be another director's salary, that could be something else.
That could potentially be 3 above average salary jobs.
Add on to that, when they're trying to recruit now, it's really difficult because you need to jump through hoops to get someone. And there's so many health conditions that are protected. And health conditions, I mean, I'm not talking about something serious here, right? There are health conditions that are protected that if you can't not give them the job on it, start day one, take 3 days off sick.
Yeah. No, exactly.
The job needs to get done. That's why you're recruiting. So if you're not there, who's doing it? All it is a massive cost to employers.
Yeah. Well, if I wouldn't want to take on staff in this current climate because it costs a loads of money, and then unless you've got someone who's an absolute golden recruit, they're going to probably know how to nail you to the wall.
System.
Yeah, exactly. Now, we want to take some of your calls after the break and read some of your messages. So if that is you and you've been shouting at the radio on this calm Sunday morning and actually just want to sort of snuggle up with Claire and I under our metaphorical slanket of sense and sip on the cocoa of cordiality, then it's 03444991000. That is the number to call. I've got some sort of like dulcet tone on today. I feel like Fiona Bruce. 03444 499 1000. I'll also value your antiques and be given Rear of the Year. 87222 is the number if you'd like to send me a text message. You've got to write the word talk before you type out your text. We're on X at talkTV. After the break, we're going to be talking about one Mr. Nigel Farage. Is he going to be the next Prime Minister? Reading some of your messages and speaking to some of you lot as well. I can't wait.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, hello, welcome back to the show. Claire, are you ready to speak to the great and good of Britain?
I can't wait. I can't wait. Who have we got?
I thought you said you can wait then.
No.
I was like, don't. Well, I'll tell you who we've got.
Who have we got?
We've got Chris, and Chris is in Epsom.
Epsom.
Fancy
Famous of
Epsom, eh?
salts.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, of course it is. Epsom salts. They
yeah.
actually Chris, do they come from Epsom? The actual Epsom salts, or is it just sort of, is it a known thing as you walk around the streets of Epsom? You've got sort of, things to sort of drift you back into a conscious state if you've had a Victorian female hysteria attack?
No.
Oh, those smelling salts, are they the same as Epsom salts?
No, they're different.
No, they use Epsom salts in baths. They then come from Epsom. Listen, good morning, Claire. Good morning.
Morning, Chris.
Alex, you're looking for the name Alex, but don't you worry, you can get Claire's name. In fact, we're going to swap seats after the next advert break. She can carry the thing.
I'm trying to stay calm. Let me get it all out.
Okay, right, it's okay. Take a deep breath. We're here for you.
Right, first of all, Glastonbury.
Yeah.
The editor and the outside broadcast manager, they need to be sacked tomorrow morning. There is no way that it can be allowed for Bob Villan to walk across the stage shouting death, death to the IDF. And then he shouted, which he missed, I think, he shouted, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. It should be free, it will be free, inshallah. Now, that is a call for Israel and every Jew to be slaughtered.
Yeah,
So
I know. That
Now,
phrase has become so normalised now. That's the problem. We all sort of talk about actually what this is talking about is the erasure of any sort of state of Israel.
Now, also, did you know, and I only learned of this yesterday, that a year ago, when, or just over a year ago, when Lord Pearson asked for Islam to be discussed and the creation of this Islamophobia, which is a nonsense, which is a creation of theirs to stop us talking about Islam.
Yeah.
Did you know that Lord Ahmed threatened the House of Lords with 10,000 Muslim soldiers to come in and take over the Houses of Parliament and the House of Lords? And Blackrod,
what?
He threatened Blackrod with 10,000 Muslim soldiers, and Blackrod had to go to Pearson and say we've got to cut. We can't.
I don't know anything about
I don't know
this story.
anything about this, and Lord Ahmed. I'm not sure who's Lord Ahmed when he's at home as well.
He's now doing time for historic rape of boys and girls.
Hold on, I thought that was someone Khan. I don't know. Well, do you know what? This is so wild, and it's only 6:39 in the morning. News UK's lawyers are still tucked up in their beds on this Sunday. So I'm going to have to tentatively tiptoe around this and say I know nothing of this story or these claims, and I can't give anybody a right of reply who has thus far been named to defend themselves against such allegations. Claire and I will, of course, Google this keenly during the next advert break. Do you mean Lord Pearson of Rannoch? I'm guessing he was the one who's going to be holding the debate.
Alex, listen, let me tell you where I was 18 months, 2 years ago. 18 months, 2 years ago, I thought Tommy Robinson was just a thug, a football thug. And as time has gone on, all right, I watched his interview with Jordan Peterson. I watched your interview with him. I've watched his film Silence, and I've watched some of his documentaries that he made. And he actually went to the House of Lords a year ago and interviewed Lord Pearson. And that's when it came out.
All right. Well, do you know what? The person I do know in this whole context, if you're talking about Lord Pearson of Rannoch, which I assume you are, because he's someone who has for a long time been a very vocal critic of Islamism in Europe. He was the first person actually to invite Geert Wilders over to the House of Lords. Back then, Geert Wilders was blocked. He's now, you know, big boy over in the Netherlands. But no, OK, so listen, what we're going to do for you, Chris, is we're going to see if we can dig around and find out more about this during the advert break, because I cannot, as a journalist, I'm afraid, sort of stand here and go, oh, wow, this is fascinating, blimey, wow, ooh, ah, without sort of doing my research and doing right of reply. Because I indeed try to be a professional. I was trained at journalism school, and I like to uphold those values because it is my responsibility. Also, I like to keep my job, quite frankly. And because, you know, times are hard, ladies and gentlemen. If I get fired from this place for making some wild libelous claims, and you know what? Some of these people, they know how to do the whole sort of, you know, libel system as well. Believe you me. I've had plenty of threats from people in the past. So I like to keep my job, and I like to keep things clean and keep things professional. So we will be looking into this at some point over these following advert breaks and see what we can find out about what you've told us, Chris. We're going to take a wee small advert break now, but don't go anywhere because we've still got to talk about Nigel Farage, and then also how the West Streeting is going to save the UK by putting us all on a diet. All right, go get your gym mats out and your protein shakes mixed up, and we'll see you after this. They promised stability.
They said the grown-ups are back in charge.
I was so happy you just couldn't believe it.
Our work is urgent, and we begin it today.
I mean, you couldn't really scrape together a worse gang of misfits to run a dog kennel. Broken promises.
Billions blown.
Botched U-turns.
And Britain is burning.
One of the most immeasurably eventful.
1 year in power.
And Britain in freefall. It's just been a disaster.
1 year of chaos.
Friday, 4th of July.
9 p.m.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, Claire and I are diligently trying to do our research into what Chris in Epsom was saying. We have established who Lord Ahmed is, haven't we?
Yes, we have.
And he has got, so he did indeed have historic sexual offences, allegations made against him. Was jailed for it. So we know that much. We've got that far in our research. We're still sort of clarifying on the rest of it, on the threats, the 10,000 soldiers and Blackrod. So unless, of course, you out there want to make like Chris and do some research for us, and send it across. We always like having remote producers.
You will not be charged for that.
It's a 0 hours contract with, and it's also an internship.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah, an unpaid internship.
And don't worry, according to the Labour Party, you can put anything on your CV. So, you can say you sort of, directed the whole show.
Yeah.
You edited the programme. You presented it.
You present, yeah. Just about, well...
I mean, Chris can now put on his CV that he is a national radio presenter. Yeah, exactly. That's the way That's the way to do things. OK, let's do some messages, shall we?
Lovely.
Because there's a few here that I haven't got through yet. Morning, Alex and Claire. If you both become agony aunts on talkTV and Claire said she could be harsh, then I think that Claire could become talkTV's Nurse Ratched, like in the film or book One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Great weekend show. I've not read One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest nor watched it.
Have you not watched the film?
No.
Scary biscuits.
Maybe I should do that this afternoon. I always wonder, because
No, today is Transformers Day or Pirates of the Caribbean box set. Oh, in fact, have you watched any season of The Bear?
The what?
Oh. Sam Fender, Olivia Dean, The Bear on Disney+. You're so
I can't have Disney. I've got Amazon Prime, I've got Netflix. Like, I can't have Disney Plus as well. That's like, I'm getting too many then if I have to sort of...
Have you watched Department Q?
What?
On... The word's pardon.
Do you know, if we could play this game until 10 o'clock in the morning, and especially if you go down the world of films. Do you know, I only watched The Matrix for the first time about a month ago.
Well, if you enjoyed The Matrix, you need to watch John Wick. Well, John Wick is an extraordinary series of collection of films.
To you, Claire. I don't like films. I don't really like watching stuff on TV, unless it's a Formula One.
So Jen said.
No, I think I'm more the opposite. I think I'm more Edwardian. I think if anything, I would happily sort of like float around doing watercolour paintings, playing on my
do you have one of those
harpsichord?
One of those silhouettes of your face, like cut out in black card and mounted.
That would be very cool. I don't like my silhouette though.
Mind you, that'd be really lovely in your new gaff.
That would be nice, my new gaff.
Really lovely.
But I think I've got a witchy profile. I prefer sort of face on. So
at least you're not Nurse Ratched.
Well, I don't know who she is, but I would wear that as a badge of honour. Rod Stewart has changed the words of Maggie May to Nigel Will. That's funny, I like that. It would be very
Someone who knows
interesting
their grammar as well, that's always good.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I thought that buffoon Bob Villan was chanting about hard of hearing Israelis with his chant, deaf to the IDF. Funny. I'm sure we're sort of mocking the estuary accent there. God help all the youngsters that look up to these lefty idiots who can't even master the English language. Indeed. Now, talking about Nigel Will, he said if he cannot give young men a voice, wait to see what comes after me. I mean, very interesting this, because I've heard Nigel say this before, and I think that this is very much the case. Of course, I was the head of media for UKIP, and during the UKIP insurgence years, sort of 2013, 2014, 2015, they put the BNP out of business. And some people go, oh, you horrible racist. The point is, UKIP had very strict policies on border control, as does Reform UK, as did the Brexit Party, on sovereignty, on maintaining British values, but at no point did it ever bring skin colour or religion into it. And Nigel was very clear about that. And so people who actually wanted to see proper controls over immigration, who were worried about the demographic change of the country, worried about the economic impact of open doors, worried about social cohesion, had a political party they could vote for in Nigel Farage, instead of having to lend their vote and hold their nose to Nick Griffin back in the day. And so it seems to me Nigel is sort of saying what he said before, which is essentially, if you don't answer the public's concerns about this, if you don't address their needs, if you don't show people of this country that you want to defend the United Kingdom, British values, Judeo-Christianity, cultural mores, our high streets, our pubs, all the rest of it, then what could come instead would be much much worse. And I think he's right on that.
Absolutely agree. And that is the big problem that the two big parties have had. They have not listened to the populist vote, and they seem to be continually not willing to listen to the populist vote. And you know, the Reform Party, I've got issues. In fact, I've got issues with all the parties. Cards on the table, completely politically homeless here, no sway either way. But with Reform, I'm most impressed with their, you know, not supporting the assisted dying bill, not supporting that horrific decriminalisation of abortion, of killing of a child.
I think two of the Reform MPs did vote for assisted dying, didn't they, I think?
But the Reform, I got an email through the other day, and I clipped it and sent it to David Bull, and I said I'm really quite impressed with this. And also bringing back scrapping the 2-child cap, because I think the parties see the benefit in families. They see the benefit of a family unit. They see the benefit.
They've got a lot of criticism, though, of
children.
people saying, but if you look at the birth rates, this actually favours a certain demographic, which isn't the sort of native homegrown demographic, so to speak.
No, I think we need to look past the looking at immigrants to populate the country, because that they could be transient, because they could come, they could go, they could come, they could go. I'm actually talking, and the vast majority of people, I think, in rundown areas with the 2-child cap, I don't think are having children for money. I really, really don't. And I think this goes beyond that. I think the cap, the removal of the cap, will actually help people. Sometimes people fall through the cracks. The support network there financially of the state should be there as a support.
Well, do you know what gets on my wick?
But the importance of children and more children in the family means that they're not growing up as a solitary or in a two-child family where they don't have to vie for attention, because normally there are 2 parents in the house. They don't have to vie for attention. If you've got more than that, the skills that these kids acquire, and I know it because I've done it, and I was actually a single mother with my 4 children, and there's no edges on any of the kids because they've been knocked off. They've learned patience, they've learned their place, they've learned
communication, sharing,
all these key skills.
I mean, this is it. If you want to know how a dystopian society is quickly made, you put in a 1-child rule like China.
And that's,
the country
look how
of only
that's
children are very easy to control. But you know, it's interesting. One thing that really gets my goat about the whole debate about pronatalism is, why don't they just put more creches in offices? You know, they've got the coffee cart, they've got the breakout space, so Keith and accounts can shoot some hooks and sit on a beanbag.
The best person,
gym membership.
The best person to look after a child is their parent.
Yeah, but
right?
the
So
thing
they
is,
should be giving tax breaks.
I agree with that as well. But if so I come in here and I host a show for 3 hours. If I had a kid, which I don't, but in the future perhaps I will, what would be quite useful is to be able to lob it in some sort of nursery in this building, come and do my 3 hours on air and pick it up again. Not have to make an extra journey somewhere else before I did it. And then if anything happens, you know, if my kid suddenly turns blue and gets covered in spots, at least I'm on site. You know, I think that there is, for a lot of women, surely just the practical thing comes down to it. But how on earth do I manage to do both? Well, it's great because it's in the same building.
Alex, women have not been taken care of.
No, they never have been.
Maternity.
Yeah.
Health, other issues with health care.
Now, talking about women not being taken care of, I'm very pleased to see that the Tories and the Reform MPs are clubbing together to force the government to add an amendment to a bill that would reveal the nationality and legal status of all offenders convicted and sentenced by magistrates and judges. Now, I have been banging on about this for ages. Every time I speak to Nigel, he always says, you're right about the women's safety thing. You were right. You've always been right on that women's safety thing, Alex. You said this, you know, you've been saying this for ages.
Tell me more.
Well, this is the point. What we need to know, and specifically, I would say, yes, we actually know a lot of organised crime comes down to foreign gangs, Albanian gangs, Vietnamese gangs in the cannabis world, although the Albanians are beginning to take over that, Turkish gangs as well. But you can go on something called the Organised Crime Index, which I bang on about a lot. It's such a cool website. It's got this heat map. You can click on countries, and it gives you you a sort of rundown of who's up to all the bad business in one particular nation, and it's very interesting. But the one that we haven't spoken about, where the data has not been collected, I would say willfully, and then where it has been deliberately suppressed, is sex crimes. Now, in any other Western European nation that collates this data, the pattern is very clear. There is a disproportionate ratio of the perpetrators of sexual offences which come from non-Western European nations, specifically Muslim nations. Now, I know this. Any woman who lives and walks around in a big city knows who the people are harassing her. They know who are following up and down the street. They know who are sort of hissing and calling and getting into your space. They know the sort of people who are brought up in cultures where if they see a woman with her hair out or wearing a short skirt, then she's fair game to do what you like, because she's not haram and you can just treat her like a dog. And so I'm quite happy, finally, after people like me have yelled about women's safety and mass migration and said, because you're not listening to us, even though it's blimmin' obvious, right, that when men from medieval misogynistic Muslim nations land on our shores, they don't suddenly have their brains bleached and become sort of, progressive Western liberals the minute that, their feet touch a Dover beach. That it's quite clear that this combination of these men with their culture coming into a hypersexualized world, because we've gone too far in that direction. And I could bang on about pornography and Kardashianization and all of this stuff as well. But you mix those two things together and it's going to spell disaster. And that should be quite obvious, but of course we don't get to be listened to unless we can start shoving graphs and statistics in people's face. So these statistics are necessary because we're being ignored otherwise. Our safety is being mortgaged at the altar of political correctness.
Well, one of the other key points from Louise Casey's report obviously was the fact the police didn't even record some of the crimes that were reported by young girls and women. No, it's absolutely atrocious, and I'm going to keep banging on about this. There are two sides to this coin. Like I alluded to earlier, there is the sort of element of the fact that you've got all these people from cultures which are completely at odds with our own coming into the country. But we do at some point, probably not necessarily on this show, but we do at some point need to have a conversation about the hypersexualization going on in our society. It's horrific. There is no morality, no respect.
When I grew up, the Spice Girls were as edgy as it got, with their sort of platform boots and their miniskirts shouting girl power. Now it's 14-year-olds wanting lip fillers, want to be OnlyFans models, Bonnie Blue, Lily Phillips, swipe left, swipe right, Grindr, you name it. It's gone mad.
And we've got Pride next weekend in London.
Oh, guys, so isn't it already here? I saw that stupid flag on every building on Parliament Square. The Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors got one of those sort of trans ones, all the blooming colours.
Why do companies have to change their logos?
You're there to tell me if my house is going to fall down, not how many sexual partners I should have or what my pronouns are.
But why do companies have to change their logos?
Oh, it's ridiculous.
It really, really is.
I don't get it at all. I'm fed up with all this virtue signalling nonsense, all these sort of Twitter ribbons, pronouns, acronyms, flags, tags. It means nothing. And it actually, what it does is it ends up in a situation, going full circle to Glastonbury, where some absolute bonehead of a man is wearing some sort of Prada Palestine sunglasses, and they're all there thinking that they're showering themselves in moral rectitude, calling for people's deaths. And people sort of go, well, how on earth does it happen in the 1930s and 40s that all these normal Germans ended up following Hitler? Well, this is how it happens.
You had me at wrecked.
But in Nazi Germany, the people who were going for death of the Jews were the university professors, they were the historians, they were the academics, they were the lawyers, they were the entitled middle classes.
Do you need a defibrillator? Do you need a defibrillator?
Yes. I do.
Come on. Let's get into the Daily Star.
I tell you what we don't. We don't need a defibrillator because we just need to cut 50 calories a day. There you go. That was the other one we're going to touch upon, which is Wes Streeting, who he needs to sort of.
I like Wes.
I like Wes actually, and he's right about this. Okay, this fact that everyone needs to just eat less and move more to save the NHS is true. And, you know, because I'm Little Miss, you know, my magic fortune ball, during COVID, I kept saying it was very clear that metabolic syndrome sparked by obesity was a huge cause of people who were dying from COVID or suffering from it badly. And for the first time, we had a captive audience stuck at home with the government giving them announcements. And although I was against the stay-at-home stuff and all the rest of the nonsense that Whitty and co started spouting at us, the government could have made everybody watch Joe Wicks and sort out their diet. That was the moment they had a captive audience, and they could have said, this is how you make yourself healthy, because it actually isn't that difficult.
Nope.
It really isn't. Eat less, move more. And you don't need to inject yourself with weird, untested drugs like Mounjaro and Ozempic. Just eat less and move more. She says, who hasn't actually eaten anything yet, so that's good. And we'll be sitting in this seat for another 3 hours, so do stay with us. We're going to be going through all the front pages after these commercials. Don't go anywhere, stick the kettle on, and I'll see you on the other side.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right. A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say. If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour. Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, well, say now, well, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back to we're just having a lovely little conversation. So I've come back with a smile before the break. Claire was like, do you need a defibrillator? I can't say that word, there's one, defibrillator. Getting a bit hot under the collar. And then she's like, oh, is that your lovely boyfriend now seeing pictures? I'm like, yeah, isn't he lovely? And so I'm all smiley now.
You see, I know what works, Alex.
Yeah, I know.
I'm a great agony aunt.
I'll tell you what is annoying about him, though, apart from most things, because he is a man.
I wouldn't say anything live on air, just...
Well, no, it's a compliment. It's a backhanded compliment.
How can it annoy you, then?
I'll tell you what it is. is. So sometimes we're walking down the street, and every now and then, not often in London, but every now and then someone comes across and goes, "Oh yeah, keep up the good work. I see you on YouTube, or I listen to your show," and you sort of go, "Oh, that's cool. Yeah, cool. Got some audience. Woohoo! Even in London, even in lefty London, someone's listening. Woo!" But when I walk down the street with him, people come up and they're like, pss, 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 pointing. Pss, 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 pss. And I'm like, all right, yeah, look at me go. And then they think he's Ryan Reynolds. It's never about me. It's always because people think he's Ryan Reynolds. And I'm like, oh, right. We once, because I was talking about wanting to go to the RAC club, you know, in those posh clubs on Pall Mall. I've always wanted to go into that one because I love cars. And I've heard it's lovely, and I wanted to see inside. So one day we're walking down Pall Mall, and I was like, I've always wanted to peer inside. So we go to the door, and there's sort of man in a suit there. And first of all, someone said, "Are you members here?" And I was like, "No, I just wanted to have a look." And we can't do that. And then someone else comes, "Excuse me, Mr. Reynolds." So I was like, this is cool.
Cool.
Yeah. So there you go. I've got a pound shop Ryan Reynolds impersonator.
You had to just.
He's not a pound shop.
You just couldn't.
Well, you know, I just turned it into sterling. I just turned it into sterling. Anyway, what are we going to talk about now? We're going to do front pages. That is what we're going to do. That is what we're going to do. So, OK, Claire, where do you want to start?
Oh, right. Let's go with the Sun.
Let's go with the Sun. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen.
17K NHS op fury. I mean, Sarah Everard. I mean, I think this whole case made every single person in this country's blood boil and made every single woman, mother, sister, aunt, female cousin, blood curdle for what this man did to her. And the respect that the whole force up and down the country has lost. They've lost trust, they've lost respect. Down to him.
I mean, so this is the story. It's a Sun exclusive on the front page this morning, which is that Wayne Couzens, who of course was the monster, the beast that faked a sort of COVID arrest of Sarah Everard, kidnapped her, mutilated her, raped her, murdered her, left her, has basically gone for spinal surgery. Well, it's not surgery, but a spinal sort of drain, isn't it? A sort of, what do they call it? I've lost the word. Someone's going to say it. But where they drain fluid from the base of the spine, lumbar puncture.
A lumbar puncture.
And normally there's a very long waiting list if you wanted this particular treatment. And the worries are that not only did he get to queue jump, but also that the entire operation, because he's such a high security prisoner, of taking him from HMP Frankland to the hospital with prison guards and all the rest of it probably cost the taxpayers £17,000. And people are like, well,
ridiculous.
If there are taxpayers who are waiting for this critical routine procedure in order to relieve them of pain, and this guy gets to sort of, you know, jump the queues.
Jump the queue.
Yeah, most people would rather he just sits there in the corner of his cell in agony. Yeah. And I'm minded to agree.
Yep.
So there you go. That is front page of The Sun. We're going to be talking about that story a bit later as well.
Good. Daily Mail. Tel Aviv blasts BBC for failing to cut hour-long live broadcast of vile outburst as police face demands.
Yeah, now arrest punk band who led Death to Israelis chants at Glastonbury. Exactly. Unfortunately, the problem is, Mr. Starmer and Lord Hermer, if you want to make sure that people aren't calling you the two-tier government, you're going to have to do something.
You are going to have to act.
You're going to have to act. You're going to have to do something. You're going to have to lift these people.
Which is not something you'd like to do, Keir,
is it? And they're so worried, tail wagging the dog, they're so worried about what the retributions are going to be. That's what it comes down to.
I mean,
all these beardy weirdies on these marches.
That's where they're so like Tony Blair and Blairism, because they're so worried what the spin will be. You know, they've got no Alistair Campbell, no Peter Mandelson. Who have they got?
I mean, as much as I despise Alistair Campbell...
Morgan McSweeney?
But you're right. I mean, on some level, they brazenly just went and sort of bombed a load of countries in the Middle East and didn't care about reprisals.
Exactly, and that's
Not that I'm saying that is a good government policy, by the way.
That's why you will find that I think Sue Gray might be, you know, her head might be reared for Angela Rayner's ascendancy.
And then, so here's another. Here's a headline.
Yeah, Telegraph,
the
yeah.
Telegraph, which is, so we're talking just before the break about, West Streeting realising that obesity and overweightness is a huge problem in Britain. And it is, and it does add
and
a
it's
huge
the
toll
comorbidity
to the NHS.
associated with obesity.
This isn't nanny state.
Nope.
Something's got to be done.
No, this is
but
fact.
the approach is weird. I mean, this one, they want supermarkets to cut 100 calories from the average shopping basket. How? Why? How does a shop do that?
And do you know what else? They're going to monitor that. They're going to get the outcomes from that. I mean, but this is we spoke off air, and I said about yesterday's press release and yesterday's report in the Times of West Streeting wanting patients to rate their experience in the NHS. You cannot do that. They're not Uber drivers.
Well, this is the thing. It's sort of moving towards...
Why?
What is it that they do in communist China? They have like this sort of social points policy or something, whatever it is, where, you know, if you've got a good shopping basket or if you haven't done your recycling right, or you get your points added on and off, and then you get like perks in the state or benefits cut, or you can see us drifting towards this position.
Companies are like that. Building construction companies are like that. They've got all these associative, like BREEAM and ISO, and in the workplace now
they sound like biblical characters, BREEAM and ISO.
So you've got to, you know, carbon neutral, this, that, and the next.
We're a considerate constructor is what we see everywhere.
Almost.
Yeah, none of you are considerate constructors.
You're not.
Not when I got to go to bed at like 6 in the evening to do a breakfast shift. None of you are. But you know, I don't like nanny statism, and to me it's very simple. So many kids today have no idea how to cook, or no idea what a diet looks like, or no idea where food comes from. And it's really easy. You bring back home economics.
Yes.
When I was at school, the only thing we had all these kitchens in our school. The only thing we did in food technology was make an egg mayonnaise sandwich. That's it. Most people have got no idea how to eat healthily.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I love cooking. I'm always bang on about it on the show all the time, boiling up my bones from a broth. You know, people don't understand. We've been told the wrong dietary advice for years as well, because actually the problem isn't the supermarkets, and it's not necessarily the individual. Part of the problem is big food, and I've been saying this for ages as well. Now RFK Jr. has gone big on it in Maha in America, but I've been banging on about this one for about 10 years as well, which is when people go and get their sort of chocomochaccino from, you know, your high street coffee chain, because it's a drink, they kind of don't think of it as food, but you could be having upwards of 1,000 calories.
But also,
which is half your food allowance for the day, at least.
Big food manufacturers and big food producers, and distributors have to realise that those living in poverty cannot just buy crap all the time, frozen rubbish.
But this is the other thing.
So
They're
we should be subsidising and underpinning good food.
This is the thing.
Fresh
if people know
food.
how to cook,
seasonal food.
If people know how to cook, actually you can easily sustain a family for a decent amount of money. You can. And all these people go, oh, well, you know, avocados might be expensive, but if you buy a bag of carrots and some eggs, it's really not.
Yeah.
And there's a gazillion things, if you know how to cook, that you can do with vegetables and eggs and, affordable brown meat. You don't need chicken breasts. In fact, the nutrients, all that collagen in that
They don't need microwaves. They need kitchens.
But the problem is big food know how, they're like big tobacco, they know how to push a craze.
New homes aren't built for families either.
Big food know exactly what to do, right? They know how to push buttons. So it was all low fat in the 80s, 90s. Oh, you can't have butter, that's bad for you. You've got to have margarine. And actually,
which is one molecule away from
seed oil, so dangerous for you. And actually, the origins of seed oil was actually used as sort of surplus in the cotton industry in America. Oh, make clothes, what's all this left over? I know, we can turn it into a cooking product. We'll tell everybody that the dairy is going to kill them, so they eat this instead. And now you've got all these colon cancers and crazy obesity and autism. And now, so the low-fat thing worked so well that everybody was going to have low-fat mayonnaise, low-fat margarine, low-fat pasta sauces, pasta salads. All of this stuff has been quietly killing people, frankly.
Low-fat, no taste.
And now what they're doing...
High sugar.
Now what they're doing is pushing the vegan thing. Because guess what? Most vegan food, most people cannot do a vegan diet that they want to eat. You know, unless you've got a very skillful sort of, you know, South Indian chef or a Japanese maestro, if you're cooking your own vegan food, you're going to rather wish you were just dead, because it's going to be boring, it's going to be tasteless. And so people then end up, I want to be a vegan, they go and get the sort of vegan chicken katsu curry. You do realise this is made in factories, pumping out carbon dioxide, if you're so worried about the environment and cows farting. You also realise that all of this stuff isn't food. It's the most low-grade astronaut rubbish. You know, it's just additives, it's emulsifiers, it's sugars, it's flavourings. It is not nutritious. It's going to rot your gut and you will die.
Before the defibrillator comes in again, right? We've just said enough, Alex. Front page, Sunday Times, starting tomorrow, Wimbledon. One of the best 2 weeks of tennis I think you will ever have. And here we've got we've got Emma Raducanu, who is pairing up with Alcaraz in
pairing up in
doubles.
what? Are they pairing up though,
I
as well?
don't know.
That's the rumour.
Possibly comment.
I think the rumour is that they're sort of sharing more than just a tennis court.
Well, let them if they want to.
Nice.
That's you know, yeah, it is. It's lovely.
Yeah, well, there you go. And distracted PM, blame me for welfare crisis. I mean, he's done this sort of big interview, hasn't he?
Did you see Beth Rigby's comment on that?
Oh, isn't he wonderful? I was just like, mate, I so did see that. I did, because she's like, this is the most human and wonderful and bold politician we've ever had. The difference between Sir Keir Starmer and everybody else is I like him because he's normal. And I'm like, but I'm sure they all are, actually. You know, I've spent time with Liz Truss, who's a great laugh, mischievous and extremely funny and extremely bright. I spent lots of time with Nigel Farage, who's probably the most normal of everybody. You know, people tell me that David Cameron used to tool about smoking cigarettes out of a Volvo strewn with litter when he was campaigning to be Conservative leader. That, in my mind, puts him once upon a time on the spectrum of normality.
Cam's at Glastonbury.
David Camp, of course he is.
No, Sam.
Oh,
Sam
Sam, of course she is. That doesn't surprise me. That's very much her scene, isn't it? But, you know, it is, of course, a sycophantic interview, the sycophantic observer, where they've pushed him, we were talking about this yesterday, pushed him into wobbling like a weeble
and never
over Island of Strangers. You know, it's like, if you start allowing left-wing newspapers to bully you and control you over the words you're using, you're done. You're done as Prime Minister. That is where, as much as I despise the character, Alistair Campbell would probably be of great service to Sir Keir Starmer right now. Can't believe I just said that.
I can't believe you said it either.
That man, I
need
can't.
to wash your mouth out now, girl.
I don't know what that is. Is that hand
sanitizer?
Like, it would have worked. It would have, do you know what they call that? They call that a prison bender.
Enough of that.
Now, the Mirror cut weights to cut weights. I mean, again, that is the sort of big thing. The Sunday papers and the Labour Party today, they've pumped this information out. It's not exactly a spicy news day, is it? It's sort of like...
oh, God, that Bezos wedding?
Oh, God. Those two, they give me the creeps.
Oh.
Did he just hire Venice?
Yeah, for 3 days.
How can you hire Venice?
The Venetians aren't very... What was that joke? How do you make a Venetian blind?
How do you? What, make them swim in their own canals?
Put them in the eyes or something.
That's a great joke, Claire. Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, that wedding is just it. It is.
It's obnoxious. It's grandiose. It's despicable. It's not reading the room, and it's not delivering, actually.
I mean, do you remember when she turned up to the inauguration with her baps out?
Yeah,
and I'm like, I don't like sort of slagging off the way another woman dresses, but come on!
No, I mean, it's just...
This is a sort of auspicious event with the swearing in of the new American president, and you look like you're sort of in the window of Ann Summers.
But I love Melania. She was just like...
I know.
Love her.
I love her. She has got a wardrobe that I would absolutely kill to have.
Oh my gosh, that woman's got style.
Isn't she so stylish? She speaks all these languages. She looks like she could actually bitch slap anybody. Do you know what I mean? She looks
serene,
ice maidenly, which I also like.
Composed, and you know, the absolute antithesis of him.
Her outfits are so good. I know. And she's beautiful. That skin as well.
Beautiful.
I know. I do love her. Yeah, and also because she's sort of, married to the wrong man, then if her husband was a Democrat president, she would be Times Woman of the Year. She'd be the front page of all the magazines. You remember how much they literally salivated over Michelle Obama? Michelle Obama could do no wrong. She's basically beatified.
And Hillary Clinton.
To a level higher than Mother Teresa.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then, Melania, who actually can speak Brazilian languages, brought up in, a Soviet world, tough as nails, supports her husband, has raised beautiful children.
One son.
Really knows how, the world works. I think she gets politics.
Oh, she does.
She looks a vision. And instead she's mocked. They mock her. But no, she don't care. Like I said, she's tough as nails, that one.
So we've got Glastonbury, Hyde Park as well, but then Oasis, did they kick off their tour?
Oh, I don't
last
know.
night in
Is that
Cardiff?
happening?
I
Not
think
yet,
so.
apparently.
Not yet.
Right,
okay.
But yeah, I couldn't care.
And you've kept the best to last, haven't you?
What's that? The Star! You know, Elliot, this is it now.
Star.
The Star is. This is the greatest headline. This is why the Star is owned by the wrong people, can I just say? It's owned by our rival publishing house. But werewolf spotted in Bridlington. Huge news, if true. I love this.
Just brilliant.
They've got a brilliant picture. A paranormal expert reckons he caught an 8-foot werewolf on camera when he went down to the woods in Yorkshire. And they've got some sort of, definitely silhouette that looks like some sort of human in shape, but it could be anything. We sort of anthropomorphise. There's an actual word for that when we see faces in clouds and things like that. There's a term, which we sort of, we can look at a plug socket and see a smiling face.
Or one of those coat hooks, like the junk octopus.
Exactly. It's part of like the sort of way the human brain works. In sort of strange shapes, we see figures. But when it comes to this stuff,
the Star is a right riveting read.
I like to believe in all of it. Can I just say?
The UFOs.
I love a UFO
something
story
on the front page.
Yeah, I love it. I just love a UFO story, a werewolf story,
beaver story.
Beavers.
You've always got beavers.
Pro-beaver, anti-seagull. Yeah, you've got to be on the right side of the nature wars. And also, one of the greatest things about the Daily Star is the fact that every now and then it publishes a magic eye. I remember doing those in the 90s. They were all the rage.
What's that?
Do you not remember magic eyes?
No.
They were these sort of weird patterns that looked kaleidoscopic, and you sort of had to look at it until you went a bit cross-eyed, and then something would come out, like a 3D shape would come out of it. Do you not remember those?
Sort of, now
they had a sort of very important fleeting period when I was a teenager, where I remember for ages sort of sitting there, be moving a piece of paper like towards your nose and back again, trying to see the word, and then making yourself feel sick in the process. But oh look, they've got some sort of bird spotting compendium as well. Isn't that nice? Cool, I'm going to keep that. Not that there are any birds in London. Right, should we do some voice notes before we rattle over to advert break? Here is Richard.
Good morning, Alex. I was up at 4 o'clock, and while I was waiting for you to come on, I put the BBC on. What a mistake. Anti-Trump, anti-Israeli. Absolute tosh. I gave up in the end and put a CD on while I was waiting. Well, CD. Put some music on while I was waiting for you. Thank you. Good morning.
Oh my God, Richard, can I just say, I was also up at 4 a.m. That is the time my alarm went off. And I turned on my television, and it was also the BBC. We were living parallel lives. We were living parallel lives at that moment in time. But yeah, you're right. It was all like, whiny, I can't stick the BBC. Plus, the BBC News Channel it's not UK news really anymore. It's basically world news because they got rid of BBC UK rolling news. And so I watched some sort of like, kind of very leftist, American-led world news programme. And then it was some sort of UK special, exclusive BBC report into holiday parks. So I watched that as well.
There you go.
I was like, do not buy a caravan in a holiday park. You're going to get ripped off.
Thank goodness you weren't ordering your full English like you did last time.
Oh, no, that's coming up later. Isn't it, Dean? Yeah. Dean's got that. Dean's got that. Did you say no, Dean? Yeah, I knew you were joking. Good. Right, let's listen to Darren.
Good morning, Alex and Claire. Darren from Kent. If they love Palestine so much, why don't we round them all up and send them all over there? See how they get on. I think they're going to have a big wake-up call.
I'll tell you what.
Thanks so much. Have a great time, ladies.
Oh, thank you, Dan. We are having a great time. I'll tell you what I reckon, though. So, you know, there's been this sort of hatched-out plan, potentially, that when Israel withdraws from Gaza, they're going to have it under the stewardship of, say, Saudi and Egypt
Qatar.
or whatever, Qatar, whoever. The Gulf nations will come together, get their own little bit of real estate and develop it, which I think is a blimmin' genius plan, personally, because it's got a beautiful stretch of coastline. And if they can Dubai-ize it, basically create a tourism industry, make use of those beaches, you can then actually drive money into the economy. That is the best way of de-radicalising people.
And
when they suddenly go, oh, look, tourists mean we've got stable jobs and therefore we need to not be sort of talking about blowing people up. It is the greatest way to create progression in a society, and I think it's genius. And I just wonder, all of these people going like, death to the IDF and stuff at Glastonbury, in about 5 years' time, when Hamas has been obliterated and Gaza's been redeveloped, they'll be the first ones there, like the ones over in Dubai doing their sort of like influencer shots. I'm on holiday in Gaza, woo woo, look at me. And I'll be like, yeah, who do you want to thank for that then? Probably the IDF. Just saying. Anyway, we're going to be taking a short break now, but don't go anywhere because, we're saying goodbye to Claire. Oh, bye, Claire. That's it, me by myself then. Yeah. Well, you can stay if you like, Dean says. Let's see. We'll find out after the break if Claire is still here. That's coming up after this. They promised stability.
They said the grown-ups are back in charge.
I was so happy you just couldn't believe it.
Our work is urgent, and we begin it today.
I mean, you couldn't really scrape together a worse gang of misfits to run a dog kennel. Broken promises.
Billions blown.
Botched U-turns.
And Britain is burning.
One of the most immeasurably eventful.
1 year in power.
And Britain in freefall. It's just been a disaster.
1 year of chaos.
Friday, 4th of July.
9 p.m.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, welcome back. Well, she left me. That means I'm all by myself. So I need your help more than ever right now. If you want to join me on the programme, participate by letting me know your thoughts and feelings on anything we're talking about today. The number is 0344499 1000. Keep a girl company. I'm all by myself. 0344499 1000 is also the number if you'd like to send me a WhatsApp message or leave me a voice note on WhatsApp. 87222 is the number if you'd like to send me a text message. If you're going to be old school about it, then you have to write the word talk before you send your message. That is the way it finds its little self into this specific studio and doesn't end up bouncing around the computer screens of TalkSport where they won't know what on earth they're dealing with. If you start saying Sir Keir Starmer, they'll be thinking, well, since when did he manage Leicester City or something of that ilk? Right, OK, now let's go back to the big news of the day, which is everything that went on at Glastonbury yesterday. The BBC, for a while now, have been broadcasting Glastonbury live, of course. It's a big cultural event, one of the biggest music festivals in the world, and it's just been getting more and more and more leftist. And so when they're broadcasting yesterday, they had decided to put a delay on Kneecap, who are the awful, monstrous Irish chanting group who seem to love terrorism and anti-Semitism in equal measure. And they thought, well, in case they say something controversial, because, of course, a member of that band had actually been arrested and released on bail for comments that had been made before, they decided they're going to put a delay on that in case they needed to dump anything contentious. Well, they didn't do the same to Bob Villain, which is apparently a punk rap band. Two guys who both go by the name of Bob Villain, who jump around on stage looking like they're homeless and saying pretty deplorable things. I mean, they shouted stuff like death, death to the IDF, which is calling for actual murder of people. Meanwhile, Kneecap shouted F Keir Starmer, and they actually called for a riot outside courts in London when a member of that band has to go and face the jury over the comments that he had previously been made. Let's speak now to Gary Mond, who's chair of the National Jewish Assembly. Gary, there's something very chilling when you see all of these entitled, privileged, largely middle-class people assembling at a massive music festival, showering themselves with moral rectitude, thinking they're on the right side of history, and yet standing as one big group chanting for the death of people in another country. It's harrowing.
It's absolutely sick, isn't it? And let's not forget that it is the IDF that has just recently saved the Western world from the threat of an Iranian nuclear bomb under the control of the theocratic mullahs who believe in murdering women who don't wear the veil, who believe in throwing homosexual people off tall buildings. And we have saved them. The IDF has saved them, saved the world from that entity having a nuclear weapon. It is absolutely obscene and appalling what happened at Glastonbury yesterday. And you know, the problem is, the fundamental problem, which a lot of people don't notice, is that the mixture of, on the one hand, entertainment and sport, and on the other hand, politics, is at the core of the entire problem. We should make it illegal for entertainers or sports people to actually use their platforms for political views. And you know, when this all began, it was several years ago. You'll recall when the England football team started taking the knee to Black Lives Matter, which is a racist and fascist organisation. Remember that?
Oh, I remember that. The thing is, though, look, artists, musicians, actors have been doing this sort of stuff for a long time, and I'm not really for banning anybody from saying anything. Look, I think most of them are absolute tools who just look idiotic, and I don't know how much sway they have politically. But what does concern me is actually that not enough has been done by this government in this country to crack down on not just anti-Semitic undertones, but brazen anti-Semitic chants. Things like from the river to the sea. I remember after October the 7th, there were ministers, foreign affairs ministers, home affairs ministers, deputy prime ministers, presidents, deputy presidents around Europe who addressed their nations from behind a lectern and made it very clear what language was allowed, what wasn't. A lot of them banned those pro-Palestine marches. A lot of them decided they didn't want the rot of Jew hate to start infesting their nations. And yet here we are in the United Kingdom in 2025, once proudly a home and a refuge to many a Jewish community, now driving them out. Basically, you know, loads of people, as you will know, are volunteering to return to Israel because they feel safer there, despite Iran missiles than they actually do in places like London now. And when I see all these crowds at Glastonbury shouting those statements without understanding history, or perhaps they do, who knows, when people question how on earth could Hitler ever have happened, all you have to do is point to Glastonbury and say, that's how.
Right.
That's how.
But firstly, it's not just the current Labour government. The previous Conservative government was no better. They allowed the marches to happen. Those marches, those hate marches that were taking place regularly and every Saturday when the Conservatives were in power, were also a major cause of the development of Jew hatred in this country. And yes, you're right, a lot of Jews are thinking of leaving the United Kingdom. We had a big debate in the National Jewish Assembly about a year ago, and at that time, 30% voted, and out of some 200 to 250 people, voted in favour of thinking of leaving the country. And it's quite startling. And yes, successive governments simply have not done enough. One of the things I think that should be done is the so-called Palestinian flag, which isn't really a flag of a country, it's a hate flag, should be banned in exactly the same way as the Hezbollah flag is banned.
Oh, but the thing is, you know, this country is so worried about reprisals from the Muslim community because we've seen this happen time and time again. There's a teacher in hiding still because he showed a cartoon of the Prophet Muhammad in Batley. I remember the two Manchester airport thugs. Their trial begins, I believe, on Monday. It took a very long time for a charge to be brought against them because what had happened at that airport had been quite willfully, deliberately clipped up and edited to make it look like a wanton, brazen attack of police against two young men, when actually it was very much the reverse. They had that divisive lawyer trying to stoke up tension, saying he was going to go and start protesting outside the police station. Time and again, and you know, a lot of people sitting in that cabinet know that their positions in Parliament depend upon getting votes from that community. They also know how vile some of the campaigns were in their own constituencies, how threatening and intimidating they were. And it seems to me, when it comes to protecting rights and privileges, it's the tail wagging the dog. They're only listening to one community and the other is being driven away. And I think in any society around the world, the minute you have Jews leaving, it is a major red flag as to what's going on in your country.
Right. And this, of course, moves us on to the debate on two-tier policing and two-tier judicial systems, which we've seen so many examples of in recent years. We actually have to get to grips with this, and it means taking some form of legal action. And as I said earlier, I think the two things we can do. Number one, I think the Palestinian flag should be banned and treated like the Hezbollah flag. And number two, there's got to be some form of way of stopping the interaction, on the one hand, between sport and entertainment and politics. And if you get performers actually making political statements at events like Glastonbury, it should be made illegal and they should face jail sentences.
Well, I disagree with you on that because I am a big fan of free speech, but perhaps record labels should be encouraged to advise their artists not to wade into a political debate, or film studios.
Free speech is fine. I too support free speech, but not when you are using your position as a prominent entertainer to espouse your political views. That's where I draw the line. Free speech?
Yeah, I don't know, because then, you know, Michael Caine backed Brexit, and I liked that. So, you know, for me, I sort of worry about these things.
I too like Brexit.
But I would say, when individuals are using words like Bob Villan have used, when you've got an act like NECAP calling for rioting on the streets of London, then those people should face the same televised trials that the Southport rioters faced. They should be put in jail for 31-month sentences. They should be made an example of, and then you don't actually have to ban sports stars and actors and actresses and musicians for making political comments, because they'll realise that they're not untouchables, that they actually can be prosecuted. They will face the full force of the law, as would anybody else. And if you're going to throw Lucy Connolly in prison, who should not be there, she is a political prisoner, then I have absolutely no doubt, if we don't have a two-tier system, that NECAP will be in jail and that Bob Villan will potentially be dragged into a police station. The problem is, of course, Gary, is that's very unlikely to happen.
Yes, that is a problem. I agree with everything you've just said. I just take it a step further. I just feel that we that I totally support freedom of speech, but not when you are abusing your position as an entertainer or as a sports person to espouse political views, particularly agitating political views and highly controversial political views. Yes, I too was a massive supporter of Brexit, and even though I like Brexit, I would say, to be consistent, that you couldn't use your position as an entertainer to advocate for Brexit.
It's an interesting one, Gary. We're going to have to agree to disagree on that. Although in terms of sentiment, I'd love them all to shut up and focus on singing or acting or kicking a ball rather than banging on about things they don't understand. But I wouldn't legislate against it. I wouldn't legislate against it. That's the only thing. But otherwise, in terms of sentiment, I'm with you all the way. Gary Mond, ladies and gentlemen. Now, talking about things that shouldn't be banned, criticism of Islam shouldn't be banned. It is a religion. It is a set of so-called values. It is a way of life that at times can be, to coin a term of the left, very problematic. And we do need to talk about it, particularly when it comes to attitudes towards women and women's safety in this country from importing a culture that is frankly medieval and misogynistic. But oh no, just as we have finally a caving in to having a national inquiry into the rape gangs, and we all know what they haven't said, oh, it's British Pakistanis. No, the common denominator is Muslim men. We can say that because it's true. There were Eritreans and Afghans and Somalians and Sudanese and other men involved in these rape gangs, and actually the common denominator is certain advocates of a certain faith which have certain viewpoints towards the value of certain women. That is a fact, and we need to be able to say it. But just as the Overton window is moving to a point that we can finally have a conversation that protects our society, protects our women, protects our values, upon which 2,000 years' worth of successful history has been built, the Labour Party are putting rocket boosters under their plans to outlaw Islamophobia. We're discussing that after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, hello, welcome back to the show. And just before the break, I was having a good old rant about Islamophobia because I cannot express enough how dangerous this legislation is. OK, so first of all, I'm going to begin by saying that if you unpick the etymology of the word phobia, it comes down to an irrational fear. An irrational fear is being scared of, let's say, a spider. Because in the UK, maybe not in Australia, but in the UK, a spider can't really do anything apart from, you know, scuttle around and make some webs and look a bit grim. They don't bite or they don't poison you in the UK. Some clever Egypt's going to sort of message and go, in Scotland, actually, someone wants to... No. By and large, OK, they don't hurt you. Or being scared of the number 13, which is a number, right? That is a phobia. Now, being scared of the Islamisation of Britain is a perfectly rational, normal, human instinct to have. First of all, we have our own culture, they have theirs. And they don't necessarily mix very readily. And it is very biologically normal, because we're tribal social animals who operate in packs, to want to defend your own. Just as much as if a load of Christians decided to go over and start ringing church bells in the middle of Mecca, they might not like it. So first of all, it is biologically built in, sociologically, anthropologically into the human condition that we want to protect our own heritage, our legacy and our tribe. But when you've got a particular religion, and yes, we've all got to say it's not all advocates of the religion, we know that. Okay, we're not idiots, we know that. But when you've got one particular religion which seems to not get along with any other religion, which blows up arenas where little girls have gone to watch their favourite pop stars, which encourages its advocates to cut the throats and decapitate little girls at a dance class, which encourages their ardent followers to stab British soldiers, which actually thinks that throwing chemicals on a woman's face to maim her if she's refused your advances, or stoning someone to death because of rape, or cutting off her clitoris and destroying her genitals because that is somehow a ritualistic practice that purifies them, whether it's, you know, allowing a grisly old man to marry a 9-year-old girl, whether it's advocating that actually if a woman doesn't cover herself up completely, she is to be shamed publicly, and that if someone is not an advocate of your religion, then they can be taken as sex slaves during times of war, which is pretty much any single time of day or night according to some people who follow that faith, then it is normal to be frightened of it. Okay, when I walk around London and I see barricades outside the Palace of Westminster, okay, I know that they're not there in case somebody nods off at the wheel of a black cab. I know they're there because an Islamist tried to mow down people on the pavements of Westminster Bridge. So it isn't irrational to be frightened. And yet, just as we're about to have, hopefully, a conversation about what went on with Muslim men targeting, raping, mutilating, torturing, abusing, grooming, drugging, killing little white girls, vulnerable white girls. Just as we're about to potentially have that conversation, the Labour Party are putting on rocket boosters their push for Islamophobia. I'm going to introduce you now to a wonderful woman who I absolutely adore. She's an ex-Muslim commentator, a women's rights advocate, Nouria Khan. Nouria, oh my God, I just wanted you on the programme today so much because it is so important that we get voices like yours to talk to us about Islamic attitudes towards women. When we are talking about having an Islamophobic definition, it's going to prevent the sort of conversation that you and I need to be having and the whole public needs to be having.
Absolutely. Thank you, Alex. Thank you for having this discussion, because we're moving into extremely dangerous territory with this bill, and more scarily kind of what's in it in terms of the individual clauses, because I was just listening to you earlier, and even, you know, comments that you were making, which are rooted in fact, as you said, actual statistics as well about migration and sexual violence crimes. Things like that now are going to be considered Islamophobic if you state basic facts. So what the issue is that they've conflated Islamophobia with racism and saying that it targets expressions of Muslimness and that perceived Muslimness. So for somebody like me, who is an ex-Muslim and who came from that faith, when you make criticism of Islam indistinguishable from the hatred of Muslims, that means I can now no longer freely, openly critique the Quran. I can't challenge the misogyny within Sharia itself, which has wider implications, as you said, for women's safety in the UK in general, with what happened with the grooming rape scandals, predominantly by Muslim men from Pakistani backgrounds. Apparently even using the term Asian grooming gangs is now deemed racist, then Islamophobic. It's got all of that conflation. And if I just merely speak about my journey and what I've gone through, then I would be deemed racist and Islamophobic. So our very existence is rooted in challenging this perceived Muslimness that the Labour Party are trying to ban.
I get the impression as well, when we look at sort of leaked intelligence reports and security reports from France and things that we know about some of the advocates of the community leaders who have been sort of recommended against by Michael Gove, put on a watch list of perhaps Cage and Mend and other such organisations, are not helpful when it comes to community relations, but instead are vectors of Islamism. I get the impression that the push to have a definition of Islamophobia isn't coming from moderate Muslims who have integrated, who, you know, just fit into British society and culture. I get the impression it's coming from the militant campaigning Islamists who actually now want to have leverage over how much they can get away with.
Oh, absolutely. And I think you see that if you kind of look into the meat of the Islamophobia bill itself, there's talking points in there about Kashmir and, you know, Muslims wanting some kind of independent nationhood. So if you have an issue with slogans like from the river to the sea, or you have a difference of opinion on the future of Kashmir, these are literally Pakistani talking points, and we're importing them here and trying to pass them off into law. And then basic things, for example, I critique the religion because that's the religion I was born into, and if I am stating a fact verbatim from the Quran or the Hadith now, that would deem me Islamophobic and make it illegal. So you've got Muslim prominent Islamist scholars and Muslim, they're called the Dawa people who, you know, proselytize religion on YouTube and things like that. And they openly say things like, Islam is an expansionist religion. We want Sharia in the UK. Our loyalty is not with Britain. If I repeat those same words, their talking points, I'll go to jail.
Yeah. I mean, this is what I've spoken to many Islamists myself who talk about the Ummah comes first, that being a Muslim is important, and actually we don't belong to a state or a country or a continent. We belong to the religion of Islam. But I'm very, very concerned about the sort of people who are being dragged in or invited in to help construct this legislation. And like you said, it is often a campaigning religion, an expansionist religion. It wants to evangelise, for want of a better phrase, and get more recruits. And it has no interest in signing up to the values of democracy. It has very specific views in the Quran on women and how women should dress and how women should be treated, particularly non-Muslim women. And we're not having a conversation, are we, about Sikhophobia or Christianophobia or Hinduophobia. We're not even really having any sort of conversation about anti-Semitism. It's only about Islamophobia, when this is the conversation we need to be having, because all those other religions, frankly speaking, are not trying to harm us.
Precisely. And I think, as you mentioned, alluded to, the timing is highly suspicious, that just when we're getting to the root causes and as a society we're moving towards being honest and frank about what happened over those 2-3 decades with these white working class girls, so much of it comes down to religious justification that these perpetrators were clearly voicing, and they're well documented in the victim survivor stories. And just when it's, you know, we're getting to that stage as a society, suddenly this bill comes down to put a legal muzzle, if you will, on all of this kind of talk. So if I state that these men actually had a different view of these girls, that can be found within the Quran itself. They were inspired by that. They were quoting Quranic verses to these girls as they were beating some of them, trafficking them, raping them. But yet now this, the Labour Party is trying to push this through and silence not just people like myself who speak out, but reformers and, most importantly, victims.
Do you know, if this goes through, I'd be minded to actually get out of the country, because my feet wouldn't touch the ground. I'd be dragged in front of a court of law in no time whatsoever for my views on the dangers of Islamism in the West in general. Nuria, thank you ever so much. It's so good having you on. Do you know what's going to happen, folks? Everyone's going to have watched Nuria's brilliant interview and think she's such a class guest. You'll see her all the time on Talk Now. The other presenters are going to steal her off me, and so they should, because she is such an important voice, a very brave and intelligent young woman. OK, we're going to be taking a short break now, but when I come back, it's Starmer versus Farage. They promised stability.
They said the grown-ups are back in charge.
I was so happy you just couldn't believe it.
Our work is urgent, and we begin it today.
I mean, you couldn't really scrape together a worse gang of misfits to run a dog kennel.
Broken promises.
Billions blown.
Botched U-turns.
And Britain is burning.
One of the most immeasurably eventful.
1 year in power.
And Britain in freefall. It's just been a disaster.
1 year of chaos.
Friday, 4th of July.
9 p.m.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and welcome back. And it is Starmer versus Farage because Keir Starmer suddenly realised that rather than attacking the Tories, no point, they barely exist. They're just going around doing vigilante videos online. They need to go after reform because that is where they are going to lose seats in any election, especially the Welsh Assembly election coming up soon. Let's speak to Peter Barnes now about the sort of headlines that have been doing the rounds today. The Prime Minister has branded Nigel Farage a wolf in Wall Street clothing and claimed he's got no idea what he's talking about in a fresh attack, speaking at the Welsh Labour's annual conference on Saturday morning. He said Nigel Farage isn't interested in Wales, he's interested in Nigel Farage. Peter.
For once, Alex, we actually might be in agreement on this issue. I know it's a real shock, but I think that these headlines are absolute categorical nonsense. To say that Nigel doesn't care, I think is categorically untrue, and I think his actions prove that perfectly right. I mean, you know, don't get me wrong, I think the policies that he's putting forward don't really hit home to where they need to, particularly when you look at voter demographics. But what I will say is that he's talking more to the people than the Labour Party have ever done in Labour. That's the point. You know, they've been a one-party city and one-party town for quite some time, and yet, you know, when they're so willing to not just put the Labour into second place, but into fourth place in polling, that's significant. That's just not, as you like to say, that's just not a protest. That is an active voter base that is disgusted with what they're seeing and they want change, and Nigel is offering that. Now, I think there's problems on what Nigel's giving, but I suppose we'll get into that in a minute.
Well, I mean, look, at least someone could say, I suppose, that Nigel Farage has talked about reindustrialisation, talked about exploring the possibility of reopening a blast furnace in Port Talbot, which Starmer says isn't possible and he doesn't know what he's talking about. Well, guess what? Actually, the state aid that has gone towards maintaining steel production in Wales has only been possible because we left the EU, something Starmer wouldn't have wanted to do 9 years ago. But, you know, I would say the people of Wales, whether or not these things are possible, probably do want to see this stuff explored. What they don't want are 20-mile-per-hour zones, being told that they're going to be a nation of refuge for any old migrant who decides to turn up there. And Nigel's talking about stuff like reinvigorating the Welsh economy, making it a tech centre, getting rid of stuff like 20-mile-per-hour zones. I mean, actually, and also, when Starmer turns around and brands Nigel Farage a wolf in Wall Street clothing, what does that make him? An ass in ASOS?
Yeah, pretty much, you know, Lord Ali's favourite model is that's just a ridiculous quote. But what I will say is, if you look at the Welsh economy, 60% of it are employed by small and medium-sized enterprises. That's the vast majority of businesses within the borders of Wales. And I'm not seeing a lot in terms of like cuts in corporation tax, cuts in kind of making sure there's a kind of economic development areas, you know. When we talk about this kind of reindustrialisation, I think the one thing the Reform Party must get right is its numbers. Because when you look at voter demographics, the key voter there are white working class women. Their biggest kind of their biggest voting driver is economic insecurity. They don't like it when you don't have the numbers that don't add up. You've got to go to them with the numbers that all add up, all the T's crossed and all the I's dots. That is that community. That's what they're like. And I think we should take great admiration from it. Margaret Thatcher understood that about the working class, and that's why she scooped home to victory with that vote, because she spoke their language. Reform can't do the usual just talking big, bold policies. They're going to have to put up some detail. And I have to admit, to give the Labour Party a bit of credit, the Reform haven't quite provided it yet. Also, when it comes to that reindustrialisation of Port Talbot, that's going to cost about £3 billion. Someone's going to have to tell me what's getting cut to afford that, because that's way out of the Welsh budget. This is the point. Even you could get rid of some of the gender-neutral loos. I suppose that could help. But the reality is there is a lot that needs to be reformed in Wales, and a lot that needs to be cut back. But we're going to need the detail. Even the Institute of Fiscal Studies is saying reform's great at giving it away, but it's got to tell us where it's coming from.
I tell you what, I'd be very excited as someone who used to work for BBC Wales and ITV Wales, and once upon a time managed a Welsh Assembly election campaign. I'd be very excited to see the doging of the Senedd, because you're absolutely right. Wales has been a one-party state for so long now. The amount of sort of, mates rates and jobs for the boys and noses in the trough and all these people who set up little think tanks and advisory boards and charities and NGOs and, that all feeds into that Assembly budget that actually don't do anything. They actually don't build a thing. They don't put any money back into the community. It is just a massive drain.
They're even expanding. They're even expanding the Senedd for some unbeknownst reasons. They're going up to 96. I don't understand why. I'd like to get the president of Argentina, is it Maloney? And I can't remember what his name is, just with his chainsaw. Just let him with his chainsaw and let him loose. I think it would be great television. I mean, I'd watch that. But I think you're perfectly spot on. The doging of these kind of local parliaments and all the rest of it needs to happen, because it's the petty corruption that you talk about there that really is sucking the life out of Wales. And I think a reinvigoration is not just needed, it's necessary, really, at the moment, because... But sorry, come on.
I was going to say, my personal viewpoint is that if you doge devolution in general, you'd figure out all you need is a Welsh secretary, and the rest of it can all go. It can all just go.
As we often like to say, gone.
Gone. I know, I miss us playing our game. Gone. What do you make of this, though? Because, some of the other things he said in this speech at the Welsh Labour conference, to me, are just plain stupid. He's turned around and sort of repeated allegation that reform sucks up to Putin, that Nigel likes Putin. I don't know where this came from or why suddenly people started saying this, because it's just patently untrue.
It's one speech about 12 years ago where he said he had an admirable character as a leader. Well, what Nigel was basically saying was he was a forthright leader. He was somebody that did it. Yes, a strong man. That's exactly what he was saying. And he said it in one line of a speech 12 years ago or something like that. It's ridiculous. Do not get me wrong. I, reform critic, not overly impressed. However, if you're going to go after them, do it properly. Because this is nonsense. This is nonsense from the Labour Party, and it's smacks of desperation. That's what it tells you, because they've nothing to run on.
Peter, thank you ever so much, but it's top of the hour and you know what that means. We've got to hit our advert break target, so that means Peter Barnes for now is gone, but he'll be back, and so will I. See you after this.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right. A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say. If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour. Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, well, say now, well, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right. A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and welcome back to the show. Seriously, this job is the hardest job in the world if you want to eat. I've been literally during the advert break, because Dean, my producer, always buys the breakfast, and I said, I'll do it this time. And during the advert breaks, I'm there trying to like go through and find something I want to eat, and this is the last 3 adverts. I've not even been able to put the order in, because as soon as I'm like going onto, you know, delivery company to sort of pick my ingredients for my ultimate breakfast, Tech Op Dave's in my ear going 5, 4, we're coming back now, 3. So still, I'm just, you know, I'm basically going to disappear. I'm going to become a twiglet doing this breakfast show because it's my one feed of the day, basically. And I have to try and order it during advert breaks, eat it during advert breaks. It's like some sort of Squid Games. Seriously. Anyway, if that's as hard as my life gets, I ain't complaining because I could do with losing a bit of timber. Anyway, as we jettison ourselves into bikini season, it's hot out there, isn't it? Scorchy-o at the moment, and also I am not complaining about that either because I do love a bit of sunshine. Right, now, if you want to get involved with the programme, this is how you do so. 0344 499 1000 is the number to dial. It's your normal network rate, so it's going to cost the same amount as when I finally put this order through for my breakfast as that, which is basically free, except that I have to pay the delivery driver, and you don't have to pay anything else. You can just talk to me and have some free therapy on the airwaves in front of the nation. You can also use the number to send me a WhatsApp message or leave me a voice note. I do love playing those out, so bring those on. 87222 is a number. If you'd rather text me, if you're going to do that, you've got to write the word talk before you send your message. That way it finds itself into the correct studio and doesn't end up confusing people with rainbow lanyards doing pop music down there, or people who only know about football in that direction. No, it comes to the powerhouse of politics and patriotism right here in talkTV's talkTV. That's not been around for a while. Talk Radio's very own little Cape Canaveral of common sense. OK, now talking about common sense, let's speak now to the former political editor of The Sun, Mr. Trevor Kavanagh, one of the greatest of all time. Good morning to you, Trev. How are you doing?
Hi, Alex. I'm very well. I'm sitting here in sunny Sicily, where it's even hotter than back home.
Oh, where are you in Sicily?
We're in a place called Cefalù, about 40 miles from Palermo, on the sun-kissed beaches. Well, we were. We're on the way home today.
Oh, no, poor you. Well, sorry to be wasting some of your last vital hours of wonderful food and glorious sunshine. Sicily is a fantastic island. Very envious. Right, let's talk about what you have been saying about Mr. Starmer. I don't think he's got many fans out there. And I would definitely, after what you've written, put you on the list of those who, well, don't seem to have much love for him. In fact, he's a coward, a clueless, cowardly windsock whose deceit has taken him from loveless landslide to landfill. Tell us more.
Well, I did sort of pull back a little there, but I have had my doubts about Keir Starmer for several years for a variety of reasons, but all of them have been borne out during his term as Prime Minister, and I think that the blunders, mistakes, ineptitude, deceit particularly, has made his tenure in office and that of the government itself, not just Keir Starmer, but his acolytes and his cult followers in the Labour movement, I think it's exposed them all as deceivers and I think unscrupulous is the word I think you would actually apply to the way they've delivered politics. Nobody trusted the politicians of the government after 14 years of government, but Starmer and co have taken it to a brand new level, below, a lower level, I mean. So I really wonder where we're going.
Yeah, I wonder where we're going. And I've not quite been able to ascertain what Sir Keir Starmer is. Because at one moment, I think that he is just a vacuum. You know, he doesn't have any ideology. He's not really a politician. All he knows is to follow the letter of the law. He's a bit of an automaton in that respect. And therefore just isn't suited to politics at all. And I go from that particular position to then oscillating to the other side, which is actually he's a hardcore Marxist. He's quite chilling in his ideology. He's deliberately put people like his old buddy, the mad Marxist Lord Hermit, in place as Attorney General, and that he got his other Lord mate, Lord Ali, to, you know, give him a glow up to make him look like the smiling face of centrist dads, when actually he's quite a grisly leftist extremist underneath it all. I don't know whether both can exist in the same, you know, concept, whether he can be clueless and a sort of, you know, hardline Marxist. Where do you put him on that spectrum?
Well, I do think it's quite possible, actually, to be a Marxist and clueless at the same time. In fact, you almost regard it as axiomatic. The simple fact is that Starmer has, throughout his entire public life, as far as we know, been a dyed-in-the-wool, pro-Palestinian, anti-American, anti-Israel. Even though he's married to a Jewish wife, I think that his views on Israel and on the politics of Israel have been hostile for a very long time. And he has appeared over the years in opposition and elsewhere on pro-Palestinian platforms. Now, I think that is the essence of the divide now between this government and its members and the rest of Britain, because we are seeing it set out on the streets and in the pop festivals of places like Glastonbury, the divide between those who think that the Muslim world can do no wrong, even though it clearly is the hotbed of terrorism, and the West generally, but Israel in particular, which are unacceptable faces of the modern Western world. And that is the heart of the divide now between sort of what I regard, at any rate, as this small, narrow, grievance-seeking, race-obsessed cult, which is the Labour rump, and the rest of common sense Britain.
I mean, do you worry, actually, that that the problem is nobody... I mean, we all hate Sir Keir Starmer, but we kind of think he's a bit ineffective. And, you know, looking at that big interview he's done in The Guardian, the left-wing journalists are now going to be able to push him around like a weeble and make him wobble over the hurty words he may have used. He says one thing to an audience that Morgan McSweeney has written on an auto cue, and then he pretends he knows nothing about it, and then he pulls back and changes his mind down the line. That he kind of looks like a bumbling, blustering idiot. But just 1 year into a job, he's put in place some pretty extreme socialist-esque policies, the creation of quangos, for instance, enhancing the muscularity of things like the OBR, chucking people in prison as political prisoners. I mean, you know, Richard Tice's article in your newspaper yesterday, going to see Lucy Connolly and actually saying, quite chillingly, I worry whether there's been an order on high to make sure this woman stays in prison, that actually, far from being inept, Starmer's very ambitious. We've still got 4 more years of him, and if he thinks he ain't going to get a second term, what on earth is he going to try and ram through?
Well, yes, and I think the big problem with Starmer is that he is a total sham. He has built his leadership bid on the fact that he was the man who ousted the Corbynites. But the fact is that he supported Jeremy Corbyn totally during the period when he served under him in the shadow cabinet. And I believe he remains of the same view politically as Corbyn to this day. He cannot afford, or could not afford then, to disclose this. But his other problem is that, as he himself has admitted in turns, he doesn't understand politics. He doesn't even like politics. So he abdicates his responsibilities to people who have worked in his office in Downing Street in recent years, and then disappears across the Channel or across the Atlantic to other places to escape the responsibilities that he wanted. So you've got Morgan McSweeney now, who is the target for all the bile from the Labour left. But in fact, he is the only person of any competence in the Downing Street office. And he probably won't survive now, but once he goes, I think things could get even worse.
Well, this is the thing. It seems to me the rebellion from the backbench MPs against things like the welfare cuts, etc., is largely in the direction of travel, that they want Starmer to be even more socialist. He's not radical enough. And now we've got this government under Angela Rayner pushing for a definition of Islamophobia, which I think is so dangerous. It's harrowing. It's chilling. As a woman in this country, if that legislation passes, I'd be minded to up and leave myself, because I don't want to live in a country where I cannot talk about the greatest threat to women's safety. I find it absolutely terrifying, quite frankly. And this is, you know, what I'm worried about with Starmer is this sort of stuff ending up in statute, stuff that the Labour Party under Blair, they knew very well how to put things in place that then become monstrously difficult to unpick down the line.
Absolutely, and only by a government which has a significant majority, and that is not likely to be happening anytime in the near future. I mean, one of the things you could look at as a microcosm of how we stand right at this moment is the treatment, as you say, on the one hand, Lucy Connolly, who's serving nearly 3 years for an unfortunate tweet, and the people who are blatantly abusing the law in, say, Palestinian action attacks on air bases, or shouting for the death of Israel in public at Glastonbury. Where is Keir Starmer now, where he was, for instance, in Southport, screaming abuse of the far right and demanding action and arrest and punishment? If there is no action to deal with the likes of those at Glastonbury today and release Lucy Connolly, I think we are watching the beginning of the end of social cohesion in this country. Did
you think we'd ever get to this stage? I mean, listening to you say that, it reminds me of quite how normalised certain things have become that 5 years ago would have been totally unconscionable. The idea that someone is in prison for a post on social media, that there could be instructions to make sure she stays in prison, that she's not been allowed visitation rights, that we essentially have political prisoners now in the UK for espousing views that, as ugly as they may have been expressed, are just simply not far left views. Did you ever think that this could happen to the UK?
No, I didn't. Well, I began to change my mind during the last 10 or 20 years as we watched the face of Britain changing, and changing slowly but substantially, and in many ways insidiously. And I think that the fact that the dice has now fallen in favour of those who have a totally different view of the way that British justice and common sense, and I think the common law, which represents our common sense, is interpreted in this country. I think politics has already entered the bloodstream of our way of life. I think that we have been divided without our consent. I think that most of the people who are listening now, and probably many who are elsewhere enjoying the sunshine, will share exactly the views that you expressed only a few moments ago about where they would like to be. Many of them don't want to be in Britain anymore. They're looking at escaping, and many of them can't. But those who can, those with the money, those who are being targeted by this government to be drained of their riches to pay for the social services, they're leaving, and they're leaving in such large numbers that they're taking their money with us, that the burden on the rest of us is going to be very, very serious over the coming years. This country's economy, as Daniel Hannan has described in the Telegraph and the Times, I think that we are going to be heading for real serious economic problems in the coming months and years.
Yeah, I agree. Economic problems that will also exacerbate even more social tensions. Now, when you look at other countries in Europe where there have been this wave of populism, we've already had it. I mean, I always say to people that we started it with Brexit. We're not dragging our heels, you know, and you've had Maloney here and Geert Wilders there and Le Pen and then Trump. No, we actually started this with Brexit. We were the vanguard. But when you look at what's happened in other countries and the mechanisms that the establishment has used to try and stop this populist deluge, whether it be lawfare, whether it be the accusations against financial impropriety in the European Parliament with Marine Le Pen, whether it be prescribing the AfD, saying they've got extremist connections and therefore they cannot stand in a plebiscite, whether it be trying to smear someone like Giorgia Meloni as a young Mussolini activist. The establishment has constantly tried to use snap elections, faux coalitions, all of this stuff to stop these populist parties from getting anywhere near the levers of power. It is quite clear when you look at polling today that Reform are on for a massive election win if that election was held tomorrow. My feeling is I can't see that polling shifting too much, because I think that polling is rooted in massive concerns about demographic change, open borders and economics, of which Farage is the only option that has yet to be tried. And that is why the public, I think, are now saying, well, look, this man's banged on about open borders for so long. We get it now, despite him having been demonised for decades. So I'm asking myself, how will the establishment stop him? How are they going to now intervene to make sure Nigel and his cohort don't get the keys to number 10? I think I've figured out a tactic they might use, but I wanted to ask you this as a veteran political editor, someone who has watched politics for decades and would have had a purview of all of these things taking place around the world. What levers do you reckon our lot are going to pull?
Well, I think that we have a problem. OK, you've got a huge majority of people who are absolutely furious with this government and angry with the Tories for landing us with Labour. And they have switched in their droves to Nigel Farage and Reform. The problem is, I think, that is spread thinly in terms of achievable wins across the country in a general election. Much as I personally would like to see the end of the Starmer phenomenon, there is always the possibility of something worse. I think a different leader might even be elected, although for the moment, Starmer is the hostage of the left and he will have to do whatever they dictate. So basically, he has lost all his authority. So it doesn't really matter what is in place. He's simply a puppet. But what I fear is that when the election actually comes, the number of actual constituencies which Nigel Farage and what's left of the Tories, if they get their act together, manage to pick up between them, I wonder how many actual seats that will turn into. But the biggest risk, I think, is a possibility of a Lib-Lab coalition. Mm-hmm. And the Libs with 70-odd seats and whatever's left of Labour could just about muster a coalition government. And I think that after the experience of what we saw with the Tory Liberal coalition, that bodes even worse for Britain going through now.
Yeah, do you know, Trevor and I, we sort of agree and disagree on this one, because my view is, I think you're right. I think the left wing will club together in a Stop Reform coalition. I think that's exactly the mechanism they're going to use. But polling at the moment, despite that reform vote often being spread thin and wide, is still showing that they would get a big majority under first past the post. And I wouldn't put it past Labour to change the nature of the plebiscite, to change the parameters of voting in order to sort of gerrymander the election rather than constituency change. I think they're likely to do things like lower the age of franchise to 16 and potentially, if Reform are looking like they could win under first past the post, suddenly pull the lever and go for PR, because I actually think in that way they could end up with a super left-wing coalition.
Well, I think you're right. I think that this government and Keir Starmer are what are described as principle-free zones. They're not in the slightest bit interest in the traditions of politics or two-party government or first past the post. They're interested in winning and changing the nation as far as they possibly can, as quickly as they can. So I wouldn't put anything past them, despite Keir Starmer's constant refrain that I am clear about this. He is clear about nothing. But one of the interesting things about these polls is that the Labour Party is being sussed by the very people it hoped to rely upon in the future, which is the under-25s votes who have deserted to Nigel Farage from Labour. And so proportional representation might backfire even then on Labour. I think that people are so angry with this government and indeed with the Tories, who have yet to begin to recover their, if you can call it popularity. So Farage, I agree with you, could actually build on this, or at least cement himself into position, rather than just being there at the vagaries of the opinion polls. I think that the anger, the distrust, nothing that this government says can be trusted by the public who elected them by accident, I believe. So I think, yes, that the strength of Nigel Farage's position will entrench itself rather than dissipate.
And indeed, I think they'll be looking at those numbers over the next 4 years and figuring out what levers they need to pull to stay in power, because that's what all governments do. But when it comes to this government, like you said, they are a principle-free zone. It's been wonderful catching up with you, Trev. Enjoy the rest of your holiday. Have a safe flight home. And eat a cannoli on me. My goodness, when you go for breakfast in a Sicilian hotel, it's like having the world's most amazing array of patisseries and desserts. It's like a protein-free zone. It's just pile up on the sugar and the orange juice. It was lovely the last time I was there. Really am quite envious. OK, we're taking a short break now. I'm going to try and order my breakfast. Loads of people messaging saying, I hope you're not using a delivery company that uses illegal immigrants. 3 of you have sent me a message saying that. Well, do you know what? I'm afraid I don't get to decide who brings my nourishment to me on this Sunday morning. So no doubt it probably will be someone from an asylum hotel. Anyway, it's our head-to-head up next. We're going to be joined by Chloe Dobbs and Grace Badamosi just after this.
They promised stability.
They said the grown-ups are back in charge.
I was so happy you just couldn't believe it.
Our work is urgent, and we begin it today.
I mean, you couldn't really scrape together a worse gang of misfits to run a dog kennel.
Broken promises.
Billions blown.
Botched U-turns.
And Britain is burning.
One of the most immeasurably eventful.
1 year in power.
And Britain in freefall. It's just been a disaster.
1 year of chaos.
Friday, 4th of July.
9 p.m.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, hello, welcome back to the show. I cannot believe I've been on air for 2 hours and 26 minutes already. Not that I'm counting, but when you sit in the studio and you're having fun, time really does fly by. And I would say we're about to sort of head back on the roller coaster and zoom through the next 45 minutes, or is it half an hour? I don't know. The next however long we're going to be, with two wonderful women who are going to really take the fight to one another, because this is what we're about to experience. Do you know what? This happened yesterday. I was waiting for that dun 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 head to head, and it wasn't there, and it's still not in the system. So I just pointed at a camera for absolutely no reason. But never you mind that, because at least I do have the guests here, so that is something. Joined by Chloe Dobbs and Grace Badamosi. Welcome, Chloe. Welcome, Grace. Now look at each other, make eye contact, shake hands, give each other a hug, whatever you want to do.
We won't start
and
a
now
fight.
kill each other.
We're not going to start a fight in the studio. We'll be nice today.
We don't advocate for killing anyone. See, I'm going to segue this. Did you like that? We don't advocate for killing anyone, unlike some acts at Glastonbury. Now, I am a big free speech campaigner, but I do think there's something particularly harrowing about when you're watching one of the biggest music festivals in the world, the biggest music festival in this country, being broadcast live to millions of people, no doubt, and you've got people on stage shouting death, death, death to the IDF, whatever you might think of Israel's particular foreign policy. Calling for death of anyone from another nation can never be a good thing. Then also saying F Keir Starmer. Well, you know, some people might agree with that. But then actually, with Kneecap especially, calling for riots in Westminster, outside the courts, when their band member goes and faces charges because of his hate speech, which I'd say in a world that isn't two-tier, in a world of equality, as he should do. I mean, what do you make of this, Grace? Is this just free speech? Should this be allowed to happen? Or does someone need to press the dump button and go, absolutely not, this is going too far?
Well, I'm a little bit mixed on it, to be honest with you. You mentioned that you're free speech as a proponent. Me too. I think ultimately people should have the right to say what they want. And on the riots, I agree that we shouldn't be inciting violence. But at the end of the day, if you have a disagreement with the government, I think you should have the right to voice that. You mentioned as well sort of the death to the IDF, whatever you think of Israel's foreign policy. Unfortunately, you can't sort of detach the reasons why people have the feelings that they do, and I think that ultimately people, outside of calling for violence, should have the right to say what they want.
Chloe?
Well, they were calling for violence. That's the reality, right? We have free speech. We have a right to protest. If Kneecap had gone up on that stage and said, I want you all to come to Westminster to protest at the court, absolutely fine. Haven't got a problem with that. Them saying F Keir Starmer, fine, go for it. I don't care. But when you give, not just suggesting people should riot, but actually giving a time and a place, That is very clear incitement, and I don't think that that should be acceptable. Then when it comes to Bob Villan, who shouted death, death to the IDF, again, you're wishing death upon someone. Yes, that was not as specific as kneecap in that they're not saying right time and place, we're going to go kill these soldiers, right? But I think that it very... You know, the IDF members, they're not members of the public in Britain, so I'm not sure the authorities will do anything about it. But I do think that it is scary that the way that we disagree with each other these days is, rather than actually making a good argument and standing there and saying, I think for X, Y and Z reason, what the way that Israel is conducting their war is not acceptable, they just shout, yeah, kill them. Just kill those Israeli soldiers. That for me is shocking, and I don't think that that is acceptable.
Temperatures are running high, aren't they? And this is what happened after Southport, which is why the government cracked down on those rioters and threw people in prison, I would say unfairly. I don't believe at all Lucy Connolly should be in prison for crude expressions on social media, but that to me weren't an incitement to actually go and do something. For all I care, she said, and there was no causal connection ever made between the two. But, you know, some wise egg, and I can't remember who, said at one point in time, those who don't learn the lessons of history will find themselves living through it again. When I saw those crowds at Glastonbury all chanting death, death to the IDF, I thought to myself, this is how you can suddenly see in Nazi Germany the middle classes, the professors, the academics, the historians, the lawyers, all actually joining in with, you know, sort of horrific anti-Semitic views, that you now have a lot of people, because to be frank, when we're looking at these pro-Palestine proselytizations, it doesn't just say there's, you know, death going on in Gaza and we want to, you know, women and children are dying. It goes so much further than that. And we know it does. Calling for global intifada, calling for from the river to the sea, which is the extermination of the Israeli nation, saying death to the IDF. Many who are conscripts and voluntary soldiers. They're not necessarily, you know, trained to be in the army. That you suddenly think we're only a whisker away from moving that forward to very, very dangerous grounds.
Well, I think the comparison between sort of Glastonbury attendees and Nazi Germany is a little bit disingenuous. I think it's a little bit of a stretch. But sort of, you mentioned that people aren't necessarily calling for just the killing of women and children to stop. I ask, who's killing them? Who's killing those women and children? It's the IDF. Do I agree with necessarily chanting with death to the IDF? Not something I would do. But at the end of the day, we can't equivocate the IDF as just sort of individual people who are going about their life. They are currently, as you mentioned, sort of taking out a war that is killing en masse civilians, and if people have a problem with that, I think they should have the right to voice that.
But what is so typical about this particular conflict? Because, you know, we have seen this, I would argue, something even more horrific, a bigger humanitarian crisis taking place in Sudan, and we're not getting death to the RSF.
It's not even in the news. Nobody knows what's going on there.
With Sudan, I think broadly that there is no disagreement on who's sort of in the right and who's in the wrong there. People broadly agree that there is a tragedy happening there. But with Gaza and with Israel, we have the sort of discourse in public, whether the IDF is right, whether the Israeli government is right in their foreign policy. That's why there is such public disagreement, because we have people refusing to accept basic fact that the Israeli government is actively killing civilians, that the Israeli government is sort of really committing acts conducive to a genocide. Like, I think...
But also, is it not the case, Chloe? I'm going to pick your brains on this one, because we know that there has been a huge propaganda operation underpinning. There's been lots of foreign funding coming into entities such as, well, I don't know, but probably Palestine Action. We know the money going into campuses in America. We know that there are malign forces at work who wanted to use straight away October the 7th as a springboard to push an anti-Israeli narrative, which is why this particular war is capturing imaginations, let's say. It's why it's become the sort of trendy campaign, put on your keffiyeh, we're all going to go and say we're all Palestinian now, etc. People who actually don't understand the sensitivities and intricacies and actually religious underpinnings of what is going on in the Middle East. And that actually this is all essentially part and parcel of the tactic, of the propaganda of the terrorist organisations, of people like the IRGC backed by Iran, and that when people are getting sucked into this maelstrom, aren't getting sucked into the Sudanese conflict and sort of the war and talking about that, it's because they might be unwittingly or wittingly doing the bidding of terrorists.
I mean, these fundamentalist terrorist groups, they are experts at brainwashing people. They've done it to their own populations. It's not the case that these people were radical individuals beforehand. You know, you've had a lot of Iranians speaking out lately because of everything that's going on in Iran, saying, you know, you say, oh, it will never happen in Britain, but Iran was a country that was, you know, free and prosperous. Women could wear their hair down, and then this is the example of tolerating the intolerant, is that you can end up very quickly with people being brainwashed and you having these terrifying fundamentalist regimes where suddenly women are not able to have their hair down and can be, you know, stoned, blinded, tortured, imprisoned if they show their hair. So I think that we definitely have a level of complacency, and you're absolutely right that the propaganda machine coming out of that war is just unbelievable. I mean, you've got various outlets just constantly just citing the Hamas-run health ministry's figures as fact when we don't know if those are true, we don't know if they're exaggerated. I mean, it's quite something when there's been a strike and suddenly 5 minutes later Hamas already know exactly what the death toll is. That's completely unrealistic. They'll talk about journalists being killed. Well, I'm sorry, but Hamas terrorists wearing press vests don't count as journalists. We've had people there making videos. I've seen various ones where you've got a guy holding his dead child and pretending like he's crying, not very good fake crying, and then suddenly the baby moves. And they've got other kids around the shot who are actually like laughing, and because they know exactly what's going on, they put out these videos. And there are sadly a lot of people falling for it. And a lot of the people on these marches, there will be some of them who know what they're talking about and have some good reason to have concern with Israel, but a lot of them, they are there and they literally have no idea what they're talking about.
And the risk is, of course, in the middle of all of this, in this sort of, you know, extremely tense international fallout over what's going on in Gaza, amidst finally getting a national inquiry into grooming gangs, rape gangs, predominantly British Pakistani men, but of course the common denominator, which no one's talking about. It's not about being Pakistani. The common denominator is about being Muslim, okay? This is very clear. And in the middle of all of this, when we actually need to really grapple with an existential crisis in this country, the defence of our own culture and the management of a culture that's hostile to our own, and I'm not talking about modern, you know, integrated, moderate Muslims, okay? We're talking about Islamism here and the medieval misogynistic attitudes that some of these men are bringing with them. In the midst of all of this, Grace, the Labour Party are pushing to define Islamophobia. Does that worry you?
Not really, to be honest. I mean, I think there's a lot of discussion about whether Muslims are integrating into British society, etc., etc. I think, firstly, I'm coming at this as a Christian, but I think one of the things that really makes me proud of Britain as a country is its ability to have people live freely as they want to. And you mentioned that we're not talking about sort of modern progressive Muslims, but that is the majority of Muslims in the UK. I think the sort of people who perpetrated the grooming gangs are such a small proportion of Muslims in this country that it's tantamount to sort of taking 1, 2, 3 individuals from any sort of ethnic minority background or religious minority background and saying that this is sort of reflective of how the entire community acts, when it's just not.
But on the other hand, I mean, what we've seen in the last elections and the snap elections is politicians elected on a Islamic ticket only, essentially, the pro-Gaza MPs. We've seen horrific campaigns. Mike Freer's office burnt down as a result of arson attacks. You know, he had to step down as an MP, a Conservative MP, because he was getting death threats. We've seen the nastiness, the vileness, the violence in some of these campaigns. We know there are Sharia courts up and down the country. We know that there has been a systemic industrial scale mass abuse, rape, torture, sometimes murder of young non-Muslim girls at the hands of Muslim men who, yes, it might represent a small minority in the community, but we also know that a lot of the people who are the community relations advocates, who often are pushing for things such as this definition of Islamophobia, are not the moderates. It does tend to be people who think that they can power grab and get a little bit more power, a little bit more leverage over the government, another sort of foothold into beginning brick by brick to transform the way this country works.
I think having a concrete definition of Islamophobia honestly helps everyone on sort of all sides of the discussion, because on the flip side, if you're someone who has a disagreement with necessarily the role of Islamism in this country, you want to be protected from sort of the law or whoever whoever going after you and saying that you're spewing Islamophobia when you may not be. And then also on the flip side, for people who are progressive Muslims, I think it is obviously right that they have a legal definition that protects them from having hate speech thrown at them. I think...
But, I mean, a lot of hate speech happens in mosques as well. When you hear some of the things that are said in those services, we're not pushing for a dictionary definition of Christianophobia. You know, we're not talking about Westernophobia. We're not talking about racism against white girls being deliberately singled out for abuse by these men. That's, you know, I mean, I don't agree with coming up with any of these hate speech terms. I think, you know, criminal law deals with everything. Don't rape, don't murder, don't kidnap, don't abuse, don't harass, don't intimidate, don't incite violence. It is a colourblind...
So a couple of points here. So first of all, I would not use the term Islamophobia, because that is referring to Islam, which is a religion, which is a set of ideas which we should be free to criticise. You can talk about anti-Muslim hatred, like, well, we may talk about anti-Semitism, where it is specifically something targeted at an individual as opposed to their idea, just like we might say with racism it's hating someone for the colour of their skin rather than, you know, some sort of crime that they've committed, right? And then second of all, there very clearly is, as you're alluding to here, a situation that is really frustrating people, where we are much more open to talk about the crimes committed by certain groups of people than of others. The reason why there is such an outcry about these Pakistani Muslim grooming gangs is not because we only care when a Pakistani commits a crime. It's because in that case there really was a concerted effort to cover up the story because of concerns about community tension and upsetting certain groups.
Point, I absolutely agree with you. Sorry, just to say on that, I think it's absolutely wrong that it was covered up because of the idea that it might sort of inflame community tensions. But if there is sort of a concrete definition of Islamophobia, you don't have people on sort of the other side thinking, oh, should I say this, should I do this, in case it's perceived the wrong way. I think for everyone in the discussion, it helps to have a concrete definition of what things are. You mentioned other crimes like don't rape, don't kill, but even in those examples, we need to have a definition of what is murder, what is rape, in order to be able to police that. I think everyone benefits from just understanding what we're talking about.
So, I mean, first of all, I'll say again that we shouldn't use Islamophobia as a term. If we're going to have a term, we can have anti-Muslim hatred, and you can define that, that's absolutely fine. But one thing, you may see more anti-Muslim hatred as a consequence of this sort of, well, I guess you could generally say two-tier society that we're living in, because I thought that Zia Yusuf made a really good point the other day, which was, he said, in class, if you want to guarantee that a kid gets bullied, you give that kid special treatment. So what's happening is people are seeing that the Muslim community gets special treatment, and that immigrants get special treatment, get put ahead of the queue. If that keeps on going on, you will see genuine racism towards immigrants. Right. You will see genuine resentment towards the Muslim community, who, as you say, most of them are good, moderate Muslims who are just going about their life and don't deserve that. So they themselves should want every group to be treated equally rather than certain groups to be given special treatment.
I would say that I think most Muslims in this country do want everyone to be treated equally, but would also disagree on the point that I don't think that they are treated differently in most regards.
Ladies, we've got to go to an advert break. We've got to squeeze in these commercials because a girl needs to get paid. So we're going to top up my wages with some product placement, and then I'll be back on the other side.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is...
Well, hello there and welcome back. We're still doing head-to-head with Chloe Dobbs and Grace Badamosi. Now, the NHS apparently has been training midwives in a trans workshop that is promoting male breastfeeding. The Queer Birth Club, of course there's one, runs LGBTQ plus competency and lactation classes using the tagline, birthing people ain't all women. I mean, Grace, like, why? How many people are there out there who are men who have taken special medicines to be able to lactate, which I think is ghoulish and gross and untested science and probably shouldn't be allowed? Use some formula, why don't you? This is just weird. But also, you know, women who have decided to become men, who have had double mastectomies. I mean, why all of this?
It's just a little bit bizarre, to be honest. Like, with what you said, this probably covers about sort of 10 people in all of the UK, and I don't really understand why this much money or time is being spent on it. I think as well, actually, if we take it a little bit more serious, it is a little bit dehumanising to actual women, I would say. Sort of this idea of calling breastfeeding now chest feeding and sort of taking special hormones to lactate. I think do whatever you want in your own time, whatever, but it when you start to talk about women's bodies and how we should be referring to them, it makes me feel a little bit gross. I don't know to you.
Do you know one thing that freaks me out, Chloe, is when women are pregnant, the amount of restrictions put on: don't eat shellfish, don't eat, you know, soft cheese, don't drink alcohol, don't smoke cigarettes, don't do this, don't do that. But if you happen to be a trans person, it's like, oh yeah, take these untested weird hormones and then feed that to your baby. I'm like, what?
Yeah, and you said this is untested science, and there is genuine serious concerns about potential deformities that are occurring in children when you've either had a man take this weird cocktail of hormones so that he can lactate, about the quality of the milk. There are serious concerns about that. Or women who are breastfeeding out of their actual breast, but they've taken a bunch of testosterone because they're trans. There are serious concerns about this, but this group, who are training the NHS, the Queer Birth Club as they call themselves, they have said that it is trans misogyny to raise any concerns about the quality of the milk that these people are producing. And this is going to be another case, or I hope it doesn't become, where kids, their well-being and their health is affected, just like with the puberty blockers, where we're told it's just a pause button, no side effects, right? So that just on the altar of wokery.
Just imagine being so narcissistic, so self-involved, so selfish that your first act of a parent is to fetishise breastfeeding and demanding someone use experimental drugs so you can grow breasts and have a baby suckle them. It is sick. It's a perversion, quite frankly.
I know, you have these men who think like, oh my God, I can't wait to experience being a woman, and then they're like, oh, I want to have a period and I want to breastfeed, and I'm like, why?
It's
why?
Bizarre, really.
Why?
And I think
You've got men who are pretending to be women, literally buying tampons.
You don't mess around with Mother Nature. It's all sick. You mess about with God's plan, and you're going to blimmin' reap the hurricane.
I think this is one of the few things that we sort of might agree on, where I just think, with what you mentioned, no one is really thinking about the actual children in this scenario. That this is, you're right, this is not healthier. This is not, in terms of sort of making yourself forcibly lactate or sort of growing breasts artificially, this is in no way the best way to sort of...
Yeah, and you should be able to raise concerns about this, but the nurse who's spoken to the NHS, who's raised concerns about this, she is now facing disciplinary action.
Oh, of course she is.
For raising a concern that there is no free speech in the NHS. So we saw how those, those women were just thrown under the bus for having concerns about getting changed in front of a man. And now this.
Now, in very unshocking news, apparently migration has driven up rents, says a major report. I mean, duh. You've got more people coming into the country at record levels than ever before. We're not building houses to accommodate them, so rents are going to go up, supply and demand. I mean, you know, what are we taking for idiots? We need a report on that. I mean, and
yeah,
it's
we
not
really
just,
don't need
but
one.
you know, but when people, and I want to talk to you about this, Grace, because you know, when people sort of say, well, this is immigrant blaming, it's migrant blaming, people have come to contribute to our economy, they need somewhere to live. Of course they do. But one thing we don't talk about enough when it comes to this story is the amount of foreigners who frankly use buying properties in not just London but other big cities as some sort of Swiss bank account.
Well, I think firstly this study is a little bit, not one side, but it doesn't capture the full picture. You mentioned that immigrants sort of, a lot of people talk about immigrants bring a lot to the country, and I do agree. I think sort of it mentions that rents are an additional £132 a month, but it doesn't talk about the effect that these immigrants have brought on GDP or in the economy, and in the absence of these immigrants, what rents would be like in that sort of example what the economy would be like in the example. And with immigrants sort of coming in and buying empty houses and sort of using it as Swiss bank accounts, I agree that is just frankly disgraceful that's able to happen. But I think that's sort of more of a class discussion. People have sort of at massive amounts of wealth taken advantage of working class people.
My view is this, right? In Switzerland, I think you have to have been resident for 10 years, a citizen for 10 years before you can buy a property in Switzerland. I think that'd be a sensible thing to do in this country. But also, you know, it's all very well people saying, we just need to keep building more houses to keep up with the pace of inward migration. At some point, you have to say, what is the optimum size of our population?
Yeah, I mean, there is just no way that if you import basically a population like the size of Birmingham each year, that as we have had with the various, you know, figures we had, 745,000 and what, 903,000 or 906,000 coming in a year. You need to build a city essentially the size of Birmingham each year to keep up with that. That is pretty unrealistic, I think it's fair to say. And even if the government does hit their targets, I think Angela Rayner wants to build 300 or 350,000 homes a year, which, by the way, a new report has shown that she is 170,000 homes behind schedule, so not much like there. Yeah, they never really meet these targets anyway, because a lot of people, when this problem comes up, they just say, oh no, it's not immigration's fault, it's just the failure of governments to build houses. Yeah. It's both.
But also build them where? Build them on floodplains, you know, destroy the green belt, you know, get rid of arable land that we'll need for farming to feed our population. I mean, no one's thought this through, quite frankly. But what someone has thought through quite cleverly is the fact that in a commercial radio station, you need advertisements to make sure your presenters get paid.
This is just crippling young people. You know, we've had all this talk lately about, oh, should we scrap the 2-child benefit cap to encourage people to have more children? And fine, you can have a discussion about that, but they're not really addressing the reasons why people and yes, it is multifactorial, but I think one of the reasons is young people like me are thinking, well, if I want to afford a house that's big enough for 2 kids and a garden for them to play in, I've got to be a millionaire.
Yeah, you ain't going to get one in London.
I agree on that point. I agree on that point, truly, that what this country has to offer for young people is absolutely abysmal. But I do not think you can lay the blame solely or even sort of majoritively at sort of immigration, because it's just not backed up by the facts.
I think we can all agree it's all just government policy, how many people are let in and whether we're actually catering to the change in our population. Right, we're going to take a short break now. I was segueing to talk about adverts and you just piped up again, Chloe. Look what you did. You put me behind sketch.
Sorry.
It's all right. I'll accept your apology. Anyway, I'm back after this.
They promised stability.
They said the grown-ups are back in charge.
I was so happy you just couldn't believe it.
Our work is urgent, and we begin it today.
I mean, you couldn't really scrape together a worse gang of misfits to run a dog kennel.
Broken promises.
Billions blown.
Botched U-turns.
And Britain is burning.
One of the most immeasurably eventful.
1 year in power.
And Britain in freefall. It's just been a disaster.
1 year of chaos.
Friday, 4th of July.
9 p.m.
UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, hello, welcome back. Now, apparently there's been a bit of a ding-dong on online between Adi Rama, who is Albania's Prime Minister, who's apparently 6'7". Didn't know that. And Nigel Farage, who's about 5'9", I believe. Not that it's about height anyway. But Nigel Farage basically said that 1 in 50 Albanians in Britain are in prison. And Mr. Rama has challenged this, saying, oops, Mr. Nigel Farage himself has just challenged me on facts. And he said, and I quote, so Nigel Farage said, did you know 1 in 50 Albanians are in prison? Show some goodwill and take them all back tomorrow. And Mr. Rama said, well, if this figure can be proven, I will personally commit to taking them all back. That's not a competing headline. It's a public pledge. Aha! Is it now, Mr. Rama? Because apparently the 1 in 50 that Nigel Farage was quoting, and this story is in the Telegraph, came from Telegraph Research, which I have in front of me now. Where they have actually looked at the statistics on foreign nationals in jails in England and Wales compared to British nationals, cross-referenced with census data from 2021, extracted the number of foreign nationals from each country who do not have a UK passport, so those with a passport, and from this, they figured out the Albanian imprisonment rate was 232 per 10,000 people, aka 1 in 50. So, do you think, Grace, that we're now going to see Albania rushing to have a lot of our inmates deported?
No. I think that Telegraph Research, like 1 in 50, it seems like, well, not saying anything, but you can fit data to sort of match a lot of statements a lot of the time. I think Nigel Farage is very good at sort of proclaiming what he believes the state of the world to be and just expecting everyone to ignore basic facts. And I think that's sort of what's happening in this scenario a little bit. I think ultimately you can say whatever you want about Albanian criminals in London, you can say whatever you want about reducing crime rate. I agree with both of those points, but to say that sort of a fact is true when it isn't.
Well, the Telegraph seem to be able to stand up their 1 in 50 fact. There's a brilliant website, I referenced it earlier, called the Organised Crime Index, which has a heat map, and it's the data's collated from Europol, Interpol, the CIA, the FBI, various police forces around the world. And what it does is it talks about the nature of organised crime in each country, and you can pick a country and read about it. And I'm pretty sure if I find the website here, it would say, because I've read it very recently, that pretty much vast amounts of the criminal underworld, organised crime, is now consolidated by, guess who? Albanian gangs.
Yeah, so I will criticise the Telegraph and say that sometimes they do quote a stat which is not really very well calculated, and they'll put it as a big splashy headline. They haven't really checked it out properly. Like, for example, there was a story that they had put out which I think said 1 in 12 Londoners was an illegal migrant, and it very much was a dodgy stat. But in this case, where this has actually come from proper census data and a lot of different sources, it actually does seem quite legit. So I am willing to believe Farage here. Now, the Albanian PM, he's actually been quite nice to Farage, in that he has said to Farage that if he is wrong about his statistic, that the alternative scenario to them taking back all our foreigners is that Nigel can go and have a really nice holiday in Albania. He says, you can come and be my guest of honour, and I'll show you how lovely it is here in Albania and how kind and warm the Albanian people are. So it looks like Farage could do quite well out of this either way.
Well, this is the thing. This is the thing. And basically, Albanians are probably by and large wonderful people, but if we're overrepresented by Albanian criminal gangs, then actually maybe we should be holding Mr. Rama at his word.
I don't think we are overrepresented by Albanian criminals, and I'm sorry, but you sort of discredit your point a little bit there, where you give numerous examples of where the Telegraph has been blatantly wrong with how they use statistics, and I'm sorry,
I'm just saying, if they give a statistic, you should properly read into the article and check the sources, which we have done here.
All I can say, folks, is here it is, the Global Organised Crime Index. There you go. If you just put in ocindex.net, you will get it. You can click on the UK, as I have done here, and when you read it, it says that Albanian gangs have consolidated most of the underworld crime. So there you go. Anyway, thank you, ladies, ever so much. Great to have you both in the studio. You still got me, however, for another hour, so put the kettle on, and I'll see you just after this.
been talking this morning about a new theme park which is going to be built. The Universal Studios apparently are going to build it in Bedfordshire. We've been asking many of you to give us some ideas for theme parks. Alison in South Wales says in the new theme park at 5 p.m. every day they could have the PIP parade. All the people driving their brand new Motability cars.
Instead of the water rapids, you can have a road you go down that's full of potholes in a car with bad suspension and flat tyres. I don't know why they're bothering building a theme park in this country. They're going right, no one will be able to afford to go to it anyway.
How about the Rachel Reeves ride, says Terry in Birmingham. You go round and round and vanish up your own deficit. It's the HS2 ride. It travels at high speed for 10 feet, where everyone gets off and into the replacement bus ride. Tickets are £50 if bought 5 months in advance, or £1,000 on the day.
There's a strong rumour going round that Rachel Reeves is going to have a kissing booth for this theme park. So what I do, mate, I shove a £5 in a pot and you can go and fill your boots.
Thank you very much indeed, and very generous of you. One from G, who says fast-track entry to every ride for illegals, plus a free night stay in the Parks Hotel and free food. New theme park bumper cars will have to pay a congestion charge, and the funhouse isn't built yet, despite Angela Rayner's pledge to build houses. What about Ghost Train doesn't move because the driver's on strike? Have a good day. This is brilliant for the theme park. How about grow your own cannabis farm? Yeah, that's a good one. An Ethiopian safari park narrated by Angela Rayner. Says Gary in Durham. How about that? This sums up the Labour Party to me. The one idea they have to improve growth for the economy is to basically have a bloody big fun fair. It's the type of idea primary school children would pitch, given 10 minutes to come up with something. Well, it turns out, Matt, in Royston, that it's not even their idea. But they're now trying to claim it's their idea, even though it was actually the Tories.
They have done brilliantly on breakfast, but you know on Drive you've done brilliantly as well. Downhill slide rides surrounded by ULEZ cameras so that people are fined on exit. Love it. You could have a Birmingham-themed Whack the Rat stall. If you whack the rat, you can have your bin emptied for free. On the Labour theme park, a house of mirrors where they're all boarded up because they can't bear to look themselves in the eye.
I've got a great one for you, mate.
This is for the. Is this for the Universal theme park run by Labour?
Moat right around the park.
Yeah.
With loads of dinghies. Call it the channel and say anyone who can break in, all is free.
Imagine the Scouser say you can break into a theme park for free.
Hi, Jeremy. Hey, it's simple. You've got the Labour ghost train.
Yeah.
Where everywhere is pitch dark.
Yes.
And as you go through, these day-glow coloured pictures of the Labour cabinet fall down in front of you. You'll hear the screams for miles.
We've been talking this morning about a new theme park which is going to be built. The Universal Studios apparently are going to build it in Bedfordshire. We've been asking many of you to give us some ideas for theme parks. Alison in South Wales says in the new theme park at 5 p.m. every day they could have the PIP parade. All the people driving their brand new Motability cars.
Instead of the water rapids, you can have a road you go down that's full of potholes in a car with bad suspension and flat tyres. I don't know why they're bothering building a theme park in this country. They're going right, no one will be able to afford to go to it anyway.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, welcome back to the show. 3 hours down, 1 to go. I've thoroughly enjoyed myself on this rather restful Sunday morning. It's rather serene, isn't it, today? Yesterday we were a bit all over the place, a bit manic. I had so much fun. Less fun today, more thoughtful. Delving into some deep topics, as one does on a Sunday. It's pub day, isn't it? So you want to be well-versed, ready to go and win the argument over a warm pint in a beer garden later. I'll do some of your messages and play some of your voice notes now because I've been rather remiss at keeping up with them on this show, haven't I? John in Bournemouth says, have you noticed our two-tier U-turn loving nutcase Keir Starmer is starting to use the phrase common sense in his boring speeches more and more these days? He thinks it'll make him sound clever, I guess. No, I think he thinks it'll make him sound like Nigel Farage because he's been saying that for a long time. This is what they're going to do now. They're going to they're going to chastise and demonise Nigel while basically saying everything that he says. And then when they still can't win, they will mess with the way that we have our elections, mark my words. I honestly believe that's what they'll do. Luke G says, will you marry me? I need a strong woman. Well, Luke, as it happens, nobody's asked yet. So, you know, you stand a chance, can I just say, because nobody else has asked. Hint, hint to my other half, can I just say, who also probably isn't going to ask anytime soon, especially not now I've encouraged him on the airwaves to do so. Probably just made a rod for my own back with that one. Lucy Connolly, Trump needs to intervene, messages someone. He seems to be the only person who can sort out that idiot excuse for a PM. That's actually true, to be honest. I thought at one point the payoff for getting a trade deal with the UK was going to be all about safeguarding free speech. And certainly when Charlie Kirk was over here, he said he was going to take the case of Lucy Connolly back to America to speak to people like Marco Rubio about, to say, come on, do you know that the UK are literally locking up political prisoners? And also true that when it comes to sort of Starmer's fawning, sycophantic approach to Donald Trump, oh, hi, Donald, I'm just going to pour you all over like I'm on a night out in heaven nightclub. And oh, look, da-da, invitation to a state visit, ha, 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 ha. Oh, you've dropped your papers on the floor. Just you stand there, I'll get down on my knees. Exactly, right? If anyone can turn Sir Keir Starmer into the whipping boy that he seems to long to be, it is definitely one Donald Trump. So wouldn't it be great if he intervened over Lucy Connolly? 1 year of Keir Summer messages, the worst year of my life and probably a very high percentage of the population. Well, do you know what? It might be the worst year in 2025, but probably going to get worse, isn't it? So, you know, brace yourself for 2026, 7, 8 until 9 when we can have an election and see what happens then. But I'm with you. I mean, sometimes I just look at what's going on and I think, how did we get here as a nation? How are we watching all these mad people at Glastonbury openly advocating, essentially, for a terrorist organisation? How can we be discussing things like protecting Islam from criticism at the same time as saying we have had huge cover-ups about Islamic rape gangs for decades now? How is it that women aren't feeling safe on the street and the statistics are still being suppressed as to quite who the perpetrators are of the majority of sex crimes? How is it that we live in a world where 8-year-old children are able to access hardline pornography and look at some of the most disgusting videos online, and no one's lifting a finger to legislate against that? No, all they want to do is make sure that we got 20-mile-per-hour zones, can't say anything that is deemed unfriendly because that is a hate crime or a non-crime hate incident. It's just, I don't know what this country is. It is a dystopian mess that even 5 years ago it would be unimaginable that it had gotten this bad, and yet it has. Let's have a listen now to some voice notes before we speak to our wonderful next guest. This is Nick.
Morning, Alex. Claire. Alex, your friend who suggested that Big Ange, as you rightly call her, will end up as Prime Minister, I think is absolutely right. I think this has been a plan by the far left for a long while. They'll get rid of Starmer as if he's not left-wing enough and replace him with an ultra-left Prime Minister. I mean, we might even see the re-emergence of Jeremy Corbyn when he's forgiven under the new regime, or John McDonnell, or, heaven forbid, Richard Bergen. But when this happens, we're in a very dark place indeed. Ladies, have a very good weekend.
Oh, why, thank you, Nick. The other lady, Claire, has since departed the studios. But, you know, at least, actually, perhaps we're in a dark place already with all of this. It just doesn't look like it because Lord Ali gave him a glow-up to make him look like he had a soul or something. Sir Keir Starmer, that is. Maybe, actually, if he gets binned and Rayner replaces him, all we'll be seeing is the wolf rather than the wolf in sheep's clothing. Right, here we go. Here's another voice note.
I was lucky enough to take 5 years off with my two children, and then whilst they were at home with me, I went off and did all my qualifications in IT and etc. So I could go back fully prepared for working again. So I didn't waste my time. I'm now in a position that I've had to retire early to look after my granddaughter because they simply weren't going to have a child. They simply can't afford it. We don't have £1,400 a month for childcare. So I've retired early, which again is a shame, but there should be more cheap childcare. It's just too expensive.
I totally agree. It's almost like giving birth was invented yesterday and is a burden on society rather than the thing that's desperately needed to propagate the human race. Crying out loud. Anyway, thank you for your voice notes. If you'd like to send me some more, 03444991000 is the number on WhatsApp where you can leave them. You can also just send me a normal WhatsApp or use that number to phone up and talk to me in person on the phone. 87222 is the number if you'd rather send a text message. Right, talk before you text. Now, let's speak to Thomas Godfrey, who is a brilliant Sun reporter who gave us amazing exclusives yesterday on migrants in hotels, working for Deliveroo, breaking the rules when it comes to having free accommodation at the taxpayers' want. Well, probably not at the taxpayers' want, at the government's want, it seems. But he's got even more fresh, tasty, newsy Sunday morsels for you. And he joins us now. Good morning to you, Thomas. How are you?
Morning, Alex. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Very well, and all the better for your company because you're smashing it out the park with news stories. Let's start off with the front page of today's Sun, which is the revelation that the vile monster, Wayne Couzens, was secretly whisked to an NHS hospital for backup.
Well, this is an absolutely incredible story by our chief reporter, Mike Hamilton, who's done just an incredible job with this. I mean, it's the fact he's been given VIP treatment. He's been whisked out of HMP Franklin in Durham, one of the highest security prisons in the country that holds some of the most notorious offenders the British public have ever known. And he was taken away with 4 staff surrounding him in a bulletproof van, a custody van, transferred into a private room and given this spinal tap operation. There's an 18-week waiting list for that in some parts of the country. And we don't know exactly if he skipped it or he was prioritised in any way. But the fact is that he's been taken out of hospital and about at least £17,000 of taxpayer money has been spent on this. And actually more money was spent getting him to hospital, keeping him there, and then transferring him back to prison than was on the actual operation.
Well, I suppose we might find out at some point, although I'd imagine the information will be kept away from prying journalistic or public eyes about whether or not there was a queue jump. I mean, I suppose one would say if there was some sort of protocol not followed, if this man needed medical attention, then perhaps he needed medical attention. Although I think all of us would rather he just lie in the fetal position, sobbing in the corner of his cell with the most severe back pain on earth. Even that wouldn't be enough. But if anything had gone wrong in that process of moving him for hospital treatment and he'd somehow managed to escape, would be in an even bigger mess.
Well, we know for a while, from what we've been told, that he had been effectively milking the condition he has of his back. He'd been making demands for quite a while to have this operation. I spoke to Vanessa Frake, the former governor of Wormwood Scrubs, a notorious London prison, and she said that he was likely to know exactly what he's entitled to, exactly what his rights are behind bars, because he is a former police officer, and he'll know that the more he complains and the more he just sort of makes noise about having back pain, the more likely prison bosses are eventually to listen to him and grant him the operation he wants. But part of this, of course, is that he's been spending quite a lot of time in the prison's medical wing. Now, we don't have prison hospitals anymore, but jails like Franklin, where it is such high security, there is quite a high standard of medical treatment because governors, where possible, do not want to send the most dangerous offenders in our country out of prison. They're an escape risk, they're a danger to the public, and the public could be a danger to them too, because people like Wayne Couzens, like Irfan Sharif, who's also housed there, like Akhtar Rudikabana, Hashim Abedi, who was also housed there when he launched the attack on 3 prison officers earlier this year. Those people could be recognisable, could become a target for the public if they are even out for less than an hour in public view. So there is a major security operation process that goes into putting this on, and that does cost a lot of money.
Now, another brilliant story by The Sun today talking about illegal migrants, the massive underbelly, the black market that exists in Britain, which we've all known, haven't we? We've all known for years. The nail salons, the hand car washes, the up and down high streets, vape shops, souvenir shops, Turkish barbers, and that's not even sort of digging round into the drug dealers, the people trafficking, the pop-up brothels, etc. We all know that there are plenty of illegal migrants working over here, not paying taxes for dodgy companies, and so little has actually been done. And once again, brilliantly, The Sun has looked into this. Tell us more.
Well, it's a lot of car washes across the country, but actually when you visit them, these businesses that have been fined for having illegal workers seem to just be operating a week later under a new name. I mean, I think one of my favourite examples we've got in the paper today is a company called Mr. Clean Car Wash, which was fined £80,000 in Bradford. We visited that business and found it's now called Dr. Clean Car Wash, which is a potential workaround. I'm not going to accuse them of continuing to hire illegal workers.
Just changing the letter M on the sign.
But it's an interesting rebrand, and I think if I'd taken over a business that had just been fined £80,000 for breaking the law, I would rename it something quite different to what it was before. But it's £3 million a year car washes have been fined, at least £3 million a year over the last 4 years, 12 million in total. But what's actually startling is when you break down those figures, it goes from about £280,000 in fines in 2021 to £8 million in fines just last year alone.
Wow.
So what those figures, I mean, that's a 780% increase in 4 years. And it shows that no one has a handle on the problem. And just because the number of fines have gone up, it means that also you can imply the number of people that we aren't catching, the number of people the government don't know about, the number of people that the insolvency service can't trace has also skyrocketed. I mean, there were 35 car washes just in the last 3 months of last year that were fined by the insolvency service right across the country. But the number of fines overall that were issued in the last 12 months, which figures are available, so the Q2 of last year to the first 3 months of this year, has gone down by 30% from 2016, when there were a record number of fines being issued. Now, the Home Office told me yesterday that they are launching a crackdown on this. Actually, the first few months of this year was the best few months we've had for a while. If you remember, there were those videos of immigration enforcement going into nail bars, going into corner shops earlier this year. The Home Office say that is going to continue, but it seems no one has quite have a handle on the car wash side of this yet.
Well, do you know what? I wish they would get a handle on all of this, because I'm fed up of watching it. It is a draw factor. It is a pull factor. It's probably also funding some pretty dodgy illicit gangs. And I'll tell you what, Thomas, if they came down my local thoroughfare in West London, there'd be no shops left. If they sort of kicked out all of those which seem to be pretty dodgy, I don't reckon there'd be anything left, which is great. Maybe some sort of independent stores could finally get a look in. Thomas Godfrey, Sun reporter, thank you ever so much for bringing us yet again brilliant news stories broken by the newspaper, which is put together by expert journalists just a few floors below, 3 floors below where I'm sitting right now. If I knock on the floor, they might even hear me. OK, we're going to be taking a short break now, but when I come back, we're going to be joined by Talk's royal correspondent, Rupert Bell.
They promised stability.
They said the grown-ups are back in charge.
I was so happy you just couldn't believe it.
Our work is urgent, and we begin it today.
I mean, you couldn't really scrape together a worse gang of misfits to run a dog kennel.
Broken promises.
Billions blown.
Botched U-turns.
And Britain is burning.
One of the most immeasurably eventful.
1 year in power.
And Britain in freefall.
It's just been a disaster.
1 year of chaos.
Friday, 4th of July.
9 p.m.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, welcome back to the show. Let's do some of your messages now. Good morning, Alex. Firstly, can I say on behalf of my partner Donna and I how much we love you? Why, thank you. Your passion for this green and pleasant land. I love it so. Let it stay green and pleasant. Your fiery British humour and your compassion for the average man or woman means we always watch when you're on. Brilliant. Now on to the brass tacks of it and the main talking point. Is your man daft? Get a ring on her finger, lad. He's really going to hate this. If he happens to, he wouldn't have tuned into the earlier part of the show. If he's going to be watching anything, it'll be now, because he'll have risen from his slumber and he'll be having stern words with me. He won't be liking that, so I better shut up. You never know. Sometimes doing less benefits you more. Bernie in Manchester says, oh my God, the illegal car washes, they're not going to be stopped because the fines are another source of income for the government. Well, I know, exactly. And you wonder how much tax these, when you've got these Turkish barbers who are doing like £1 million in turnover, and it's like, what? You've only shaved one beard in a month. Are they paying taxes on that? Brilliant show, as always. Why, thank you. This is John from Rotherham. Thanks for keeping us sane. Keep up the fantastic work, sister. I'm going to try. I'm being fuelled at the moment by 85 slices of bacon and 2 fried eggs. Every time Dean orders me a really lovely breakfast at the weekends, I'm there like, go on. I feel like I want to be a bit healthier today. I mean, I'm massively overloaded on the meat yesterday, so, I want to try and cut it back a bit. And the breakfast comes, and I think it had no fewer than 6 thick slices of bacon. 6! I think the man wants to kill me. Alex, isn't Trevor Kavanagh simply the best? Why can't we have more like him? Trevor Kavanagh really is a brilliant, brilliant man. It has to be said. I've been blessed with utterly fantastic guests today. And in terms of keeping the level of quality high, well, we're going to fail you right now. No, we're not. We're going to do exactly that. We're going to maintain the splendour of the people contributing to this programme with our royal segment with none other than Talk's royal correspondent, Rupert Bell. Good morning to you, Rupert.
Good morning. I wonder where you were going there, Alex, but that's very good. You retrieved yourself. You found yourself going up an alley. You were about to be rude about me, but then you came back on the bridle immediately.
There you go.
I'm very impressed.
I like that. Came back on the bridle, but you've taken off your silks and you've put on your tiara today, because we're not talking horse racing. We're going to be talking everything going on in the palace, and particularly, well, not so much in the palace, those 2 characters over in California. Because, I mean, I kind of understand where Harry's coming from as this, but he's desperate to make sure his kids retain HRH titles. They are technically in line to the throne. I have a feeling, though, that if Prince William were to become king anytime soon, he might not be as sympathetic to that.
Well, I'm actually not sure why they've got the HRH title, because they're still born into the royal family. They're living in America. You just have to take a look at the example of the Princess Royal. She married Captain Mark Phillips, but she refused to take a title, which she could have done, and he could have been given a title, and the children could have been given an HRH, but she did not. Whereas you look at Prince Andrew, he has his children. He marries, for want of a better word, a commoner, Sarah Ferguson, and yet he, again, has deemed them to HRH. The Duke of Edinburgh, his children don't have a title. So actually you wonder why is he bothering to keep the HRH bit? Because he is living in America, where last time I checked, they don't believe in titles. It all smacks of sort of slight hypocrisy that he wants to break away from the royal family and be his own man, yet he's almost saying, well, my children going to an American school have got to be bestowed this HRH, which puts them out of place and sort of unnecessary spotlight on them. So I sort of don't understand why he's so insistent on that when he doesn't want to be part of the royal family.
Well, it's commercial, isn't it? I mean, for both of them, the connections to the royal family is the only thing that makes them vaguely interesting. Otherwise, they're a pair of sort of relatively talentless numbskulls with very little original content to offer the world.
Well, that's a pretty harsh description, but there may be an element of truth there, Alex. But the fact of the matter is, he is still by birth, and there's talk, when the king dies, that he will be at heart and centre of the funeral, which is quite right, because he is still, the king is the father to Prince Harry. But the whole thing is just sort of again, with Meghan now launching her rosé this week, God knows what the markup on that was and where she actually, I don't imagine she was actually testing the provenance of the grapes and everything, but she's, there's a lot going on in their lives, but they need to commercialise absolute everything now to give themselves relevance. And the only way they have to do that is to cash in on the fact that they are the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, and he is the son of the King of the United Kingdom. And that is where I think people slightly lose patience with them. So if William does want to get rid of the HRH, I don't think it's going to cause too much consternation amongst most people in this country.
We're playing some video at the moment, Rupert, of it looks to me like home video from the Sussexes, enjoying days out with the family. Again, doing the normal Meghan Markle thing of advertising how much better her life is than ours. She's got the perfect husband, the perfect weather, the perfect furniture, the perfect children, the perfect produce, the perfect garden, the perfect beehive, the perfect hair. Bog off, shut up. You know, is it really that good behind the scenes when you have to live with a dopehead like him? I don't know. But it seems to me that they've sort of given up on this whole idea of we want our privacy. We want to make sure our children are protected, because now they seem to be full steam ahead on behind the scenes like they're a reality family like the Kardashians and potentially commercialising these kids. Maybe that's why they want the HRH.
Well, absolutely. They're trying to give themselves, she always, her podcasts that she's done, trying to create this heavenly situation. Well, it's probably quite easy to look as everything is perfect if you're living in a hugely expensive villa in Montecito, one of the richest suburbs, towns to live in California. It is quite easy to look everything in the garden is rosy in the Sussexes family, but don't tell me she's out there gardening and getting her hands dirty and and picking the vegetables. No, it's all smoke and mirrors with her. Harry is rudderless. Yes, I know he's nipped into New York recently to appear and give some more, what appears, if I see the clip right, and I assume it is right, a sort of monologue of word salad. I think they are in a very difficult position at the moment. They will obviously believe that they can make money out of their title. Sometimes, isn't the adage, sometimes all publicity is good publicity? Well, they haven't had, but it keeps them, the notoriety is still there.
Yeah,
yeah,
carry on.
But what will happen, I think the royal family, the king wants to see his children. Why not? Any family would like that. But he's made it impossible, has Harry, for the rest of the family to trust him. And that's the really sad thing about the whole thing. It's all his own doing, yet he seems to think he is the complete and utter victim in all this. There are two sides to every coin, of course there are. But he has played the victim to an absolute nth degree, and I think people have victim fatigue when it comes to Harry.
I get the impression as well, like I was sort of saying earlier, that, hopefully we'll keep our king for many years more. But they do seem to be sort of nurturing now William as the future king. His look has changed somewhat. I'm really appreciating that beard and being on horseback, leading trooping of the colour. We don't know that many details about the king's health. We understand he's got cancer. We don't understand the diagnosis or prognosis, but one knows that there's only a limited amount of time he'll be able to serve us as our king. And I get the impression that when William becomes king, he is going to be absolutely rigid on how he treats the Sussexes. I think they'll be frozen out completely.
Well, I think, the king, Prince William has probably, what has happened in the last year with the diagnosis of cancer diagnosis for his father, also for his wife as well. He's certainly had his mind concentrated on his situation. And I think that means he's done a lot of soul searching and thinking about how he wants to be the monarch and how he wants to rule when he is king, what he brings to the table. So I think it's been a sort of, growing up lesson by, because obviously he realised his dad was in the 70s when he ascended to the throne. So, we all know that, you're in, how long? No one knows. So for the king, obviously set back with the cancer, but he's still looking as if he wants to do as much as possible, as we saw, even, Royal Ascot, you name it. He's out and about and he wants to still be proactive. attractive. They're talking, they always have funeral plans. Operation London Bridge is always something. Obviously they've done it recently, and they sort of will have said what went wrong, what went right, what do we need to do. And then, obviously, there's possibility of 80th birthday celebrations for the King, which, again, will have to be planned. Will he feature in that? We've got the Invictus Games taking part in this country in 2027, which Harry would be expected to attend. The interesting thing is, will the Duchess of Sussex attend, like she's gone to other ones? She was in Canada, she goes to Germany, but in this one at the NEC in 2027 will be interesting to see whether she wants to be centre stage. So that might give an indication that things have thawed if she is allowed, not allowed to come, if she comes. So that'll be an interesting dynamic in a couple of years' time when which is, I think it's about 2 years now, that they staged the Invictus Games at the NEC, where it's going to be big. I know people are planning it already. There will be a huge number of service personnel from all around the world taking part. So it will be a big occasion. And obviously the King might, given his role within the British military, again, we'll see an important place to be. But will he be with his son? This is going to be, a lot of the build-up will be around that. And hopefully by then, some of the sort of heat might be diffused, and there may be a rapprochement between the families, and they can. But it's a long way. This road is a long one at the moment for them to get back to what will feel like a normal family.
Indeed, and too many opportunities, of course, for the Sussexes to pull the big I'm a victim lever and make things even worse. Rupert Bell, thank you ever so much for joining us today. OK, we're going to take a short break now, but after that we are joined by royalty again, this time in the form of Mr. Kevin O'Sullivan. He is, of course, talkTV royalty, and also he's been performing on stage at Glastonbury. Who would have thunk? Find out more after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back to the show. Dean's telling me I've got egg on my chin. He's lying, isn't he? I can't see I haven't got a mirror, but if you're watching on YouTube, do I? No, Tech Op says I don't. See, he's nasty, my producer. He's mean, he's spiteful, nasty, as Donald Trump would say. Nasty. Right, let's do some of your messages now. Morning, Alex. I was at the Iron Maiden gig at London Stadium yesterday, and the contrast with Glastonbury was stark. Oh, what, sensible people compared to nutters? Iron Maiden was an unbelievable gig, full of excitement, enthusiasm, theatre, adrenaline, joy and great musicianship with no politics. What a contrast to the nasty and appalling events at Glastonbury, with talentless singers getting publicity through hate and naivety. Keep up the great work at talkTV. Now, talking about talentless people featuring at Glastonbury, have a look at this.
We have seen great progress since we gathered here a year ago.
Kneecap.
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 Kneecap is pretty disgusting.
A band I've never even heard of.
They'll never make anything of their lives.
A little bit of breaking news to bring you, and that is that counter-terrorism police will investigate rap trio Kneecap.
Yesterday, I wrote to Glastonbury Festival urging them to remove this
despicable evil which Kneecap represents.
Well, did you notice whose little noggin popped up in that sort of video there, that montage of Kneecapophobia? Or was it the same as this mug? Let's have a look. There he is!
Hello.
Kev, you've been at Glastonbury. You've been on stage at Glastonbury.
I made Glastonbury, me and Peter Cardwell.
Amazing stuff, amazing stuff. And in such great company there with the terrorists, the anti-Semites, the radical leftists, those people calling for riots on the streets of London, death to the IDF, Steer Karma, Keir Starmer. I mean, I'm sure actually the last group you'd probably sympathise with, but otherwise, what a motley crew you are.
Well, yes, Glastonbury has been a big festival of sort of pro-Palestine fanaticism. I don't know if you saw CMAT on Friday. She finished her rather spirited set.
Who?
CMAT. She's good, actually. She's a sort of Irish singer. But anyway, she's big. And she finished her set on Friday by getting the whole crowd going, free, free Palestine. And then you had yesterday, before Kneecap came on, a guy called Bobby Violin getting everybody to chant death to the IDF. And then on came Kneecap, of course, and after featuring me as a representative of the fascist press, they then proceeded to start chanting about Palestine action and attacking Keir Starmer and so on and so forth. So, yes, Glastonbury takes its usual political position, and we're all supposed to go along.
But the thing is, did it send like shivers down your spine? Because look, I mean, Glastonbury's always going to be some sort of mad leftist jamboree. Most musical, festivals are, because all the, they sell their blimmin' meat-free burgers for £25 a pop, and spend 400 quid to go to the most guarded place on earth to live in tents. But then they all moan about, cost of living crisis, and actually open borders should be better, and then, we shouldn't have to have migrants living in tents, they should get hotel. I mean, it's just, one big giant parade of hypocrisy. But at the same time, instead of this time finding it funny, laughing at the leftists, which is one of my favourite pursuits, I found myself feeling really quite disturbed by the crowd getting riled up, even going as far as calling for the death of people in another nation. And you suddenly think, this is how it happened in Germany. You can see now how people get brainwashed to such an extent that not 2 years after a music festival had been massacred by terrorists, here they are at a music festival, essentially being the mouthpiece of those terrorists.
Well, we can see a lot of Palestine flags there, but there was an event on Friday in one of the tents, and everybody's sort of waving Iran flags. So that's the new thing, never mind supporting Palestine. Now we support Iran, an excellent country. So yeah, it's this knee-jerk opposition to Britain. They hate everything that we are. It's self-loathing, and while they're doing that, they revere anybody that is an enemy of this country. At the moment, it's so. Apart from these Palestine flags, there's lots of Iranian flags at
part of me would love to invite those people to go over to some sort of music festival in Iran, because I would imagine under an Islamist theocratic regime, there probably aren't many of them.
No, exactly right. And don't forget, also at Glastonbury, Jeremy Corbyn addressed the crowd as well. He told the crowd that we should be building bridges, not walls. Build bridges, not walls. Have you seen the walls around Glastonbury?
I know.
They are, they sort of make Checkpoint Charlie look like a walk in the park.
I mean, actually, it sort of makes you think if you needed some sort of guarded massive encampment where, 200,000 people can all camp simultaneously in comfort while not being able to get in or out, and that's about the number of people on their wait list waiting to get asylum granted. Well, there you go. Glastonbury demonstrates it can be done.
Yeah, exactly right. Have you seen that? I mean, not only have they got these kind of Colditz-type walls, they've got huge watchtowers, with the guards at the top. So Glastonbury, it's like a sort of huge detention centre or something. I'm wondering whether it's to sort of stop people breaking in or to make sure no one breaks out. I don't know.
Well, what they should do is ask everyone who's gone to Glastonbury to leave their tent behind, keep their yurt in good working order, and then invite all those people being disseminated among hotels to go and enjoy the feel of Glastonbury once the event is over.
Oh, well, exactly. And now, so we've got Rod Stewart today, haven't we?
Do you reckon he's going to get booed on stage? I say that with sort of slight delight, because I don't know why, actually, because I actually both like Rod Stewart and I like what he's espousing when it comes to, saying give reform a go. But it's just, it's almost the sort of schadenfreude, it's the sort of titillation of watching leftists get triggered.
Yeah, well, Kneecap gave Rod a particularly hard time because he's come out and said that he's sick of the Tories and he rather likes Nigel Farage. So in Kneecap land, that's a no-no. So Kneecap were furious about that. So were other people at Glastonbury. You're not allowed to reform at Glastonbury. So, did you see Michael Eavis, who sort of organises it? He owns Worthy Farm. He basically told anybody who didn't want a free Palestine, don't go to the festival, don't go to Glastonbury. You have to want a free Palestine.
And there he is. Hasn't he managed to, I don't know, I could be wrong on this, and I don't want Michael Eavis to sue me, but haven't they managed at Worthy Farm to find a way around the inheritance tax?
I don't know. They probably have. They're probably calling it a venue, aren't they, or something?
Yeah, probably. I mean, that is one place. If they were, proper people, you'd expect them to have the sort of, save our farmers, the Stuck Farmer initiative. But you don't get any of that because it's more important to save terrorists over in the Middle East.
Of course it is. Yes, that's what Glastonbury is, a festival of saving terrorists in the Middle East. Some of the bands are all right, but it is a swirling mass of kind of liberal left metropolitan elitism, basically. Everybody there is terribly middle class.
Have you been to Glastonbury before?
Have I been?
Yeah.
No, God, no.
How much money would they have to give you to actually turn up?
Thousands, absolutely thousands. I can't think of anything worse. I really can't. Can you?
No, I actually can't. I made the mistake once upon a time of going to a music festival because my favourite band, James, were one of the big acts. And I'd seen James live a gazillion times, and it was in the Lake District. And I thought, well, that's a pleasant place to go. I rather like the Lake District. I'd love to go and see James. Anyway, I went to this festival, and it was the worst 2 days of my life. It was just, just nightmare. Loads of people wandering around like sort of dementia patients, high on drugs, warm, horrible alcohol, about 15 quid a pint, nowhere to go to the toilet, intolerable posh kids who think they're sort of virtuous, really rubbish acoustics. I was just like, honestly, this is dreadful. Why would you do this?
Well, yeah, exactly. 90-minute queue for the Portaloos. And when you get there, you wished you hadn't, you know what I mean? So why anybody goes to this, I just, it's beyond me. It's beyond me.
No, I think concerts are one thing. I happily go to any concert. I love a bit of live music, but festivals, blimmin' heck. And I like camping as well. I like live music. I like camping. You would think, therefore, I would enjoy a festival, but no.
No, I mean, no, it's not for you and it's not for me. Somebody said that the good thing about Glastonbury is everybody that you don't want to bump into is there. So it's a good place to get rid of all the irritating people if only for 4 days. Unfortunately, they'll let them out tomorrow.
I know that the asylum once again empties back onto the streets of our metropolitan cities. Kev, anyway, finally, congratulations. Well done on having your first ever Glastonbury appearance. We're proud of you. Many more to come, please.
Thank you very much, Alex. I'm very proud. I am.
All right, my darling. Let's catch up again dead soon. Right, this is it. This is our final advert break before the end of my programme. But I'm going to be joined by a pretty mega guest after this. It's a huge cricketing legend, so stay tuned.
They promised stability.
They said the grown-ups are back in charge.
I was so happy you just couldn't believe it.
Our work is urgent, and we begin it today.
I mean, you couldn't really scrape together a worse gang of misfits to run a dog kennel.
Broken promises.
Billions blown.
Botched U-turns.
And Britain is burning.
One of the most immeasurably eventful.
1 year in power.
And Britain in freefall.
It's just been a disaster.
1 year of chaos.
Friday, 4th of July.
9 p.m.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. And if I try and imagine something that is quintessentially English, if I try and think of a lovely summer's day, I kind of think about that sound of leather on willow, the wonderful summer sport of cricket. And joining me now is a massive cricket legend, Sir Andrew Strauss, former England cricket captain, of course. Good morning to you, Andrew. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. Now, you want to spread the good word of cricket far and wide. Tell me how.
Yeah, good morning, Alex. Well, I'm heading down to the West Country today, not to Glastonbury, but to the Apex Cricket Festival, which is a under-15s tournament going on. But it's a tournament with a difference because it's boys and girls. It's genuinely global. We've got the Namibian under-15 team coming along, as well as teams from all around the world. But also, it's a load of kids from different backgrounds coming together. So you've got schools, you've got academies, you've got Warwickshire under-15. The MCC Foundation are putting in 2 teams as well. So a very different sort of feel to a festival. And then the final bit is that it's a tournament to be won, but also a lot of learning to be going on as well. So we've got some brilliant coaches down there. We've got a lot of sort of personal development work going on as well. So it should be 4 fantastic days, thankfully not sleeping in tents either.
Yeah, indeed. Now, tell me about the sort of uptake of cricket among young people. I'm not a young person. I'm going to confess something to you now, OK?
Oh, dear.
Despite being a Gloucestershire girl, I've never really watched cricket, if I'm honest with you. But I did used to live in India, so I know how balmy they are about cricket over there. One of my best mates, Sonia, always makes me watch the IPL, which I quite like because they wear snazzy costumes and it's a bit quicker. But what is the uptake of cricket like at school level in this country? You know, because certainly loads of young boys and girls now are dreaming of becoming footballers. That's pretty, you know, ubiquitous around the UK. But I've always imagined cricket to be more one of those things that kids in posh schools play rather than inner city schools.
Yeah, well, I think to a certain degree you're right. I mean, obviously you need the facilities to play cricket, and in inner city schools you're not going to get a lot of that. But I think just generally, if you take a step back and look what's happened in India in the IPL and the way that's really engaged their whole population, I think that sets a pretty good template for what we can do here. We've got our own version of the IPL here called the 100, and what you're seeing at the 100 is both men and women playing. You see an audience at those games which are really family orientated. So, you know, mums and daughters and dads and sons. And of course, like if you want anyone to be interested in a sport, you have to create heroes. And so, you know, the likes of Ben Stokes and Joe Root are fantastic role models. And so I think there's a lot to be really optimistic about with regards to cricket in this country. Always we have so many opportunities for people to spend their time, you know, doing leisure activities. So there's always going to be a sort of competitive playing field in this country. But cricket is pretty well placed to take advantage of that summer period. There's no doubt about that.
Do you know what? I still have a grudge against cricket, and I'll tell you for why. My brother's a massive cricket enthusiast, has tried for a long time to get me involved, because I actually do love sport, but I like sport where there's a really high risk of death and maiming. I'm into Formula 1 and rugby primarily. And my brother said to me, I used to live opposite Oval, the cricket ground, and he said, we've got to go to the Oval together. So I said, yes, we will. And he promised me picnics in the sunshine. He promised me beer snakes, and I'd never heard of this before. I was like, what is the beer snake of which you speak? And he told how everyone puts their like pint glasses together and it goes all around in these massive long tubular formations. And I was like, okay, now you're talking. So we go to the Oval, and first of all, they confiscated half of my picnic because it was in inappropriate packaging, and they had banned beer snakes. So I'm like, where's the fun in cricket? Sell it to me, Mr. Strauss. Given you are one of the biggest legends of the sport, why should I peel my eyes away from the Grand Prix and stick on the cricket instead?
Well, I mean, obviously the beer snake is a central part of any game of cricket, but I think if you take a step away from that, I mean, the great thing about cricket is there's something for everyone, really. So if you love the sort of cerebral side of cricket, then Test cricket is for you, and you can see how that sort of game of chess sort of develops over 5 days. But the 2020 format, or the 100 format, is short and sharp, entertaining, loads of fours and sixes, loads of music, loads of entertainment, and lots to drink as well. So, like, I mean, I think it depends on what floats your boat, to be honest with you, Alex. I've sort of got a sense, I think, on what floats your boat, but the great thing is the game of cricket can provide that for you.
I'm glad to know. I mean, it's a good job the cricketers themselves aren't contributing to the beer snakes. I'm not sure how well the throwing and the catching would go down. Might slam a few sixes over the rope, that's for sure. But as you've done sort of, you know, massive tours that have taken you all over the world playing cricket, where's been your favourite place to play?
I mean, that's always such a hard question to answer, because everywhere you go is so unique. I mean, I think for me, the real eye-opener was going to India for the first time, and, you know, that was probably 25 years ago now, and India was a very different place then to what it is today. But just, again, you mentioned it, the passion for cricket over there. I mean, I remember us bizarrely going into a Pizza Hut and having 2,000 people outside the Pizza Hut by the end of it, us sort of munching our way through our meat feast, just because they wanted to catch a glimpse of the England cricket team. But just that, you know, aside from the cricket, just the incredible vibrancy, the energy, the chaos that is there. I mean, it's such an eye-opener and a very, very special place to go.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, as someone who lived there, you're right. You know, kids in the UK kick a ball about between them, don't they? But in India, they grab anything they can find, Coke cans, sticks, to all assemble and play cricket on the streets. It's a really magical thing. And I'd imagine you've been very lucky to go to the Caribbean, South Africa, you name it, you've enjoyed it, and well deserved too. So good luck with promoting cricket to youngsters. We certainly need to get them off their iPads, out from behind screens, out into the fresh air, and actually contributing to a very important part of English, British heritage and Commonwealth heritage as well. Sir Andrew Strauss, thank you ever so much, and good luck.
Thank you.
OK, well, there we go. Maybe someone will be able to convince me that as long as there's a beer snake and good sunshine, it will be worth my while giving cricket another go. I think I was put off by the maths of it. Do you know what I mean? It's Andrew there saying that, you know, for those who like the more cerebral element, the 5 days, the tactics, you have to be like Carol Vorderman or something with averages and percentages. And, you know, I can't do it. I'm just like, are they going to crash at this corner or not? That's what I like. OK, let's end the show with some of your calls, shall we? This is Ricky in London. Good morning to you, Ricky.
Morning, Alex.
Good morning. Right, what's on your mind?
A quick one about this Islamophobia issue.
Yeah.
I don't think the fact is people. I mean, Islamophobia. When people talk about Islamophobia, what they talk about is the truth, basically. So I don't think you can outlaw the truth. People are if a Pakistani Muslim gang is a Muslim rape gang, it's a rape gang. No amount of outlawing that kind of language is going to change anything, because you can't put us all in prison, can you? Let's face it. You can't put everybody that tells the truth in prison. People will still call them Pakistani rape gangs, no matter what kind of policies you're going to bring out, aren't they?
Yeah, but it's just, you know, the worry is that it's going to have a dampening effect on anybody who feels very concerned about the march of Islamism. That is sort of campaigning Islam. That is an Islam with a sort of expansionist mentality, whose ideologies and cultural mores are in direct conflict with many of our own. It's going to make people very afraid at saying, hold on, do we need to stand up to these forces? Looking at what's happened in other countries where there have been rapid demographic change, what do we need to do as a nation to make sure that we protect ourselves, that we maintain our own heritage, that we leave a positive legacy for the future? And I just think if you're silenced on talking about what is essentially, I would imagine, one of the biggest inbuilt threats in this country to our way of life, then we're up the proverbial creek without a paddle.
No, it isn't going to happen. People are going to tell the truth. People are going to say it as they see it. So they can't put us all in prison, Alex. It's impossible.
Yeah, but, you know, the institutions have been accused of cover-ups with all these rape gangs, social workers, police. Do you not think that actually once Islamophobia is brought in, that's going to get worse? That the institutions will be the ones saying, oh, well, you know, a bit like they followed Stonewall and everyone had to have pronoun badges, rainbow lanyards and unisex toilets. Actually, it's the institutions that are there, paid for by the public to protect the public, which are the ones who usually gulp down these mad bits of non-crime hate legislation.
Yeah, but that's not going to... People are still going to have free speech. They're still going to... You can't outlaw the truth. It doesn't matter what else you bring in. You can't outlaw the truth. People are going to say things as they see them, and people are going to tell the truth, which is what they're doing about Islam at the moment and Islamophobia. I mean, it all comes down to what's facilitating all this? What is at the core of it all? And we're looking at basically democracy itself, which was never, ever meant for a multicultural society. Democracy is a game of numbers. And that's why, I mean, you call it an expansionist religion. I call it an invasive religion. So basically, that's at the heart of it. At the end of the day, it will come to the point, we're talking maybe years down the line, we will have to outlaw certain aspects of Islam because they don't fit with Western Christian culture, do they? So I think, you know, eventually we are going to... I've lost the train of thought. I mean, another something I want to put in your